Chapter 7:15. The fierce power of the spirit-eating bugs made those barbarians hesitate and hesitate again, not daring to go forward and offend Lin. The scene was frozen for a while. This was power. Lin soon broke into the Tiger Canyon twice in a row, causing blood to flow like a river, and voodoo barbarians suffered heavy casualties. Now, he killed a half-step king with one arrow. Under such circumstances, no one dared to be the first to test Lin Sun, even though they suspected that Lin Sun was just bluffing and pretending to be strong in appearance. Lin Sun was also anxious. Only he knew that he was really an arrow at the end of its flight. Even when Lin Sun seized the time to absorb the power of the high-grade spiritual crystal, a strange and mysterious heat flow suddenly came from the 4 acupoints of the heart vessel in his chest and spread all over his body. In an instant, the dried-up power in his body was nourished by the rain. In a twinkling of an eye, Lin Sun was refreshed and recovered part of his strength. This was the power of the spiritual vein. Lin Sun was also shocked. He could clearly feel that the white and holy spiritual vein was shining in his heart at this moment, flowing with mysterious power and heat flow, as if it had been awakened. This was something that had never happened before. Devouring abyss, happiness came from the extreme. Could it be that the power from the spiritual vein can only be awakened when I try my best? Lin Sun was enlightened. The heaven-devouring abyss was a rare innate attribute even in the ancient times. There were very few records of its fearsomeness and rumors, because it was too rare. But there was no doubt that devouring abyss had unimaginable mysteries. Otherwise, how could Yun Qinbai, a peerless figure of the heaven-reaching sword sect, covet it and cruelly deprive Lin Sun of his spiritual vein when he was still a baby? Today, Yun Qinbai had already set foot on the legendary perfect road with the talent of devouring abyss. He was already the first sword practitioner in the ancient Desolation territory and was known to be invincible under the life-death realm. From this, it was enough to infer the horror of devouring abyss. But for Lin Sun, his understanding and comprehension of devouring abyss had been at the exploratory stage, and he still couldn't master the mystery of this inborn talent. That was why Lin Sun was so surprised and pleasantly surprised when he felt the change of the spiritual vein at this moment. No matter what, his body, which had been on the verge of death, was recovering his strength at an astonishing speed because of this strange change. Unfortunately, time was too tight. Lin Sun wished he could sit on the ground with his legs crossed and meditate on all the mysteries of this mutation. But in the face of a formidable enemy, he could only restrain himself. Moreover, he had to be alert to the battle that might break out at any time. Whoosh! In the stalemate atmosphere, a flying light suddenly flashed out. The cold light tore the void and pierced straight at Lin Sun's throat. It was a white-bone flying sword. Courting death. Lin Sun's eyes shone with cold light, and he suddenly pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest. The terrible pressure of the bow alone instantly crushed the white-bone flying sword into pieces and turned it into a rain of light with a bang. Bang! At the same time, a spirit arrow shot out at an incredible speed toward a powerhouse in the enemy army. He was a spiritual awakener. He couldn't help but use his flying sword to test Lin's strength. But he never expected that Lin Sun's counterattack would be so fierce and overbearing. Damn it! With a curse, he dodged to one side, but he was obviously a bit slower. His right arm was shattered by the spirit arrow, and his flesh and blood burst out, which made him roar like a wild beast. All the onlookers were shocked. Another spiritual awakener was injured in this test, which made the voodoo barbarians change their expressions again. Could it be that this young man is really confident and fearless? Lin Sun sighed in his heart. A part of the strength he had just recovered was exhausted with this arrow. The only fortunate thing was that the mysterious heat flow in the spiritual vein was constantly replenishing the exhausted power in his body. I don't believe that he is invincible. Let's go and kill him together. No matter what, we must kill him today. After a short struggle, Feng Kuan roared and decided to kill Lin Sun at the cost of his blood. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the field became more and more solemn. In fact, the stalemate lasted only for a moment. But only Lin Sun himself knew the danger and urgency of the stalemate. Now that the enemy finally decided to take action without hesitation and fear, Lin Sun sighed in his heart, gritted his teeth, and also decided to fight. Although the power provided by the spiritual vein couldn't make him recover immediately, as long as he continued to recover, it was enough for Lin Sun to have the power to fight. But this battle was destined to be dangerous. Rumble, however, before this fierce battle could erupt, a deafening rumble suddenly resounded in the distant sky. A pitch-black warship that was over 10,000 zhang long, resembling a continent floating in the void. It crushed through the clouds and whistled toward them. Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief and murmured in his heart, "Finally, it's here. It's not in vain that I saved you this time." On the side of the voodoo barbarians, there was an uproar of shock and anger. "It's the large mighty battleship of the human empire. God, the empire's army of practitioners has been dispatched." All the people present changed their expressions. Mighty battleship was a large battleship of the Xiao Empire. Once it was dispatched, it would definitely cause a great war. As the voodoo barbarians who had been fighting with the empire for thousands of years, how could they not know that the appearance of mighty battleship also indicated that the big shots of the empire were also dispatched? Damn it! Feng Kuan, Jin Wu and other spiritual awakeners also looked gloomy. They didn't expect that the empire's reinforcements would come at this moment, and with such a great force. Fight! Feng Kuan was unwilling to give up. If he didn't kill Lin Sun today, and take away his bow and arrows, there would definitely be endless troubles in the future. However, as soon as he finished his words, a cold snort suddenly resounded from the sky. "Fight? I'd like to see what you're going to do." The voice was domineering and powerful, rumbling in all directions. Then, a horrible pressure swept across the whole field, making those voodoo barbarians stiff all over. In an instant they felt like falling into an ice cave, and their souls were about to leave their bodies. Life-death realm. At this moment, even the big shots like Feng Kuan and Jin Wu felt cold in their hearts, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They all realized that the situation was hopeless. "Retreat!" Feng Kuan roared. In fact, there was no need for him to speak at all. When they saw a life-death realm king and a mighty battleship rushing towards them, those voodoo barbarians had already lost their fighting spirit and fled in panic. Lin Sun completely relaxed his tense nerves, and a feeling of weakness and exhaustion also came to his mind like a tide. This battle was absolutely filled with perils, and the slightest mistake would result in one's death. Fortunately, all of this was about to come to an end. "I didn't expect that you are still alive. You're really tough." Suddenly, a figure fell from the sky and appeared in front of Lin Sun. He was majestic and vigorous, and his hair was as black as ink. When he opened and closed his eyes, a terrifying domineering aura spread out. It was Zhang Sunlai, the general of Camp 7. However, to Lin Sun's surprise, Zhang Sunlai didn't chase after those fleeing voodoo barbarians after he appeared. What surprised Lin Sun more was that Zhang Sunlai stared at him with a livid face at the moment, with a posture of anger. "Remember, don't make trouble for me in the bloodthirsty battlefield in the future. I can save you this time, but if you get into trouble again next time, no one will help you collect your bones, let alone save you." Regardless of Lin Sun's feelings, Zhang Sunlai scolded Lin Sun fiercely, and then turned around and left, regardless of whether Lin Sun listened or not. Lin Sun was stunned. This general was really bad-tempered. "Child Lin, it's great that you are still alive." In the distance, Lu Wenting ran over with sweat all over his head. When he made sure that Lin Sun didn't lose his arms or legs, he breathed a long sigh of relief. Immediately he complained, "Child Lin, don't take risks next time. If something happens to you, it's hard to explain it to the general." Lin Sun said with a faint smile, I didn't expect so many voodoo barbarians to gather in the Tiger Canyon. It's you who should be blamed. You arranged this task for me." Lu Wenting was embarrassed at once. He felt embarrassed and said, "It's normal to have emergencies in the bloodthirsty battlefield." "Anyway, thank you, Lord Lu." Lin Sun cupped his hands and said. Lu Wenting sighed, "Alas, as long as you don't risk your life like today, I'll be satisfied." Lin Sun smiled and didn't express his opinion. In the distance, the Wei Yuan battleship landed on the ground, from which many practitioners of the Empire rushed out. When they arrived here, they were shocked. Along the way, they saw corpses of voodoo barbarians one after another. Some of them exploded, and some of them still had wreckage. Pools of blood could be seen everywhere, which was horrifying. In the Tiger Canyon, the hills were broken, the earth cracked and almost collapsed. Corpses were piled up everywhere. Arrow marks were obvious, and rocks cut by saber chi were scattered everywhere. They almost couldn't believe that it was just a teenager who caused all this. My God! This is the blood of a half-step king. Was there a half-step king here? An experienced practitioner of reincarnation, developing realm of the Empire, exclaimed when he found the bloodstains left by Manjio. This sentence caused a sensation among all the practitioners of the Empire present. They were in an uproar and looked at Lin Sun with awe and disbelief in their eyes. So many trophies! Before long, even the 3 huge bags abandoned by Lin Sun at the entrance of the Tiger Canyon were found. Looking at the bags full of bloody trophies, those practitioners of the Empire were stunned. Wasn't this young man too ferocious? At this time, Lin Sun had already set foot on the Wei Yuan battleship. This place was meaningless to him, and he was in urgent need of time to restore his strength. He didn't want to stay here any longer. As for the trophies, with Lu Wenting, the old guy in charge of military supplies, no one would dare to touch them. Chapter 7:16. In the 7th camp, after Lin Sun returned, he immediately returned to his room and began to practice. For one thing, he had consumed too much energy in this battle and needed to recuperate. But more importantly, he wanted to take this opportunity to carefully perceive and explore the mystery of the spiritual veins. While Lin Sun was practicing, the outside world was already in an uproar. When great General Zhang Sun Lai personally led a mighty warship and set out from the camp while seething with killing intent, it drew the attention of many people. They were all guessing who exactly had such great face to actually make Zhang Sun Lai personally set out. When Wei Yuan battleship returned, Lin Sun suddenly became the focus of all the practitioners in the camp. It was a pity that Lin Sun hurried to practice as soon as he returned, so that the practitioners in the camp had no time to find out. However, when they saw one after another stuffed bags being carried out of the Wei Yuan battleship, the whole camp was boiling. When they learned that all the bloody military merits were killed by Lin Sun alone, all the practitioners in the camp were shocked and completely dumbfounded. A young man of Tao Insight realm killed so many enemies in the bloodthirsty battlefield? Damn, most of them are senior magi, and there are even spiritual awakening level ones. God, did he kill all of them by himself? Someone was so shocked that he couldn't help but curse. Other practitioners in the camp also looked at each other and were shocked beyond word. Senior magi. That was comparable to Tao Insight realm, which was enough to make most of the practitioners in the Empire feel tricky. But now, at least most of the military merits in the bags came from the parts of the killed senior magi. As for spiritual awakening level, it was even more amazing. In the voodoo barbarian alien tribe, spiritual awakening level was a real big shot. Usually, to kill such a person, the real top practitioners of reincarnation developing level of the Empire must be dispatched. But now, at least 5 strong practitioners of spiritual awakening level were killed, and became the military merits of the young man named Lin Sun. This was too inconceivable. Even the veterans who fought in the bloodthirsty battlefield all year round couldn't keep calm, because such a thing was too rare. Hutong, Abi and others were also in the crowd and witnessed everything in front of them. When they learned that Lin Sun was rescued alive, they all breathed a sigh of relief and felt much more relaxed. After all, they were all deeply aware that Lin Sun's identity was too special and not simple. Otherwise, General Sun Lai wouldn't have been so anxious to rescue him in person. If Lin Sun died, all of them would be implicated as well. Fortunately, Lin Sun did not die. However, when they saw the luggage filled with military merits being carried out one by one, it still made Hu Tong and the others indescribably shocked. Previously, many of them regarded Lin Sun as a playboy, ignorant and contemptible, like a blood-sucking worm of the empire, who only knew how to snatch military merits, which was extremely abominable. Who would have thought that the one who saved their lives in the end would be such a profligate son? Furthermore, the military merits that he had obtained were enough to make any reincarnation development stage grand cultivator in Camp 7 feel so ashamed that they could not lift their heads. The people of the time don't recognize the cloud-soaring tree, and only when the cloud-soaring tree is high will the Tao begin. Hu Tong sighed with emotion. What? And a half-step barbarian king was also killed in the battle? Some practitioners of the Empire who went to rescue Lin Sun walked down from the Weiyuan battleship and told the news, which immediately caused an uproar, and their eyeballs almost fell out. It's impossible. He is just a teenager in Tao Insight Realm. How could he cross a big realm and kill a higher existence? This is even more ridiculous than a legend. Someone questioned. Yeah. Could it be that General Sun killed that half-step barbarian himself? Someone also made an inference. Facing these doubts and inferences, those imperial practitioners who returned from the rescue all showed disdain and didn't bother to explain. In fact, they were still in a state of confusion until now. They couldn't figure out how Lin Sun did it at that time, which was too horrifying and incredible. The only thing they could conclude was that a half-step barbarian did die in the battle in Tiger Canyon, and his blood and broken bones had been collected back. It was absolutely true. On this day, the Camp 7 was particularly lively. Until late at night, both the official army of the Empire and those rogue practitioners were talking about the same name, Lin Sun. This young man, who had just arrived at Camp 7 yesterday, had made a name for himself in Camp 7 in just one day with his bloody battle achievements. On that day, many practitioners even went to visit the place where Lin Sun lived. Unfortunately, it had been heavily guarded and no one could get close. This was naturally arranged by Lu Wenting. He didn't want Lin Sun to have any more accidents, so as soon as he returned, he dispatched an elite force to guard the door of Lin Sun's room. Lin Sun was the only one in the entire Camp 7 who enjoyed this special treatment. Lin Sun was practicing in seclusion, so he knew nothing about these things. Crack, crack. His room was quiet, except for the sound of high-rank spiritual crystals breaking from time to time. 3 days passed quickly. General, Lin Sun's military exploits in the battle in Tiger Canyon have been counted. Lu Wenting looked a little strange. How much? Zhang Sun Lai raised his head from the desk and asked. Lu Wenting swallowed his saliva with difficulty before taking a deep breath and saying, 1 first-class military merit and 37 second-class military merits. Zhang Sun Lai's pupils shrank. He patted the desk and scolded, Nonsense! First-class military exploits? Did you deliberately take care of this boy? The so-called taking care of Lin Sun meant favoritism and fraud. Lu Wenting naturally understood it. He immediately complained and said, General, Bloodthirsty King has told me to treat this boy fairly. How dare I falsely report his military exploits? After a pause, he continued, This military exploits are because a half-step king warrior was killed by Child Lin. Has it been confirmed that he killed the half-step king warrior? Zhang Sun Lai raised his thick eyebrows. He had heard of this, but he doubted whether it was Lin Sun who did it. After all, even he, a life-death realm king, had never heard of any practitioner of Tao Insight Realm who could kill a half-step king warrior. This had never happened in the thousands of years of history of the Empire. It was absolutely unprecedented. It's confirmed. Our spies got the exact news from the voodoo barbarian camp. The dead half-step king warrior was called Mangio, a top senior figure of the dark barbarian bloodline. He had been serving in K, the descendant of the dark barbarian royal family. Lu Wenting hurriedly explained, according to the news from the voodoo barbarian camp, Mangio was indeed killed by Child Lin, and, speaking of this, he was a little hesitant. And what? Zhang Sunlai frowned, a little dissatisfied. Lu Wenting braced himself and said, and according to the news, Mangio was killed by Child Lin with one arrow. Hearing this, Zhang Sunlai slapped the desk in front of him and scolded, "Bullshit! Killing a half-step king warrior proficient in assassination with one arrow? Are you king kidding me?" Lu Wenting smiled bitterly. "I know you don't believe it, but it's the truth. Many people in the voodoo barbarian camp have seen this scene with their own eyes. It can't be fake." Zhang Sunlai fell into silence. After a long time, he rubbed his eyebrows and murmured, "Where did the old bastard bloodthirsty king find such a powerful little monster? Killing a half-step king warrior with one arrow? It's really freaking abnormal. It seems that the bloodthirsty king intends to use the bloodthirsty battlefield to hone this kid." Seeing this, Lu Wenting knew that the general had begun to re-evaluate Lin's ability, which might be a good thing. "General, there's one more thing," Lu Wenting said. "Go ahead. The voodoo barbarian tribe has issued a new blood list for arrest today. There's no change in the ranking, but what? Child Lin's name also appears on it." Hearing this, a cold light suddenly bloomed in Zhang Sunlai's eyes. "What's the ranking?" 49th. Zhang Sunlai slapped the table, which suddenly burst into pieces and turned into flying iron scraps. He couldn't hide his killing intent. What a high ranking! The voodoo barbarian tribe wants to make Lin the target of public criticism. Lu Wenting also thought so. The blood list for barbarian tribe was the same as the bounty list of the Empire, but the names listed on it were all the practitioners of the Empire. Every one of them was a person that the voodoo barbarian tribe wanted to kill. The higher the ranking, the greater the threat to the voodoo barbarian tribe. Generally speaking, those who could be ranked in the top 100 of the blood list for arrest were almost the top figures in the reincarnation developing realm among the practitioners of the Empire. But now, Lin Sun had just arrived in the bloodthirsty battlefield for a few days, and he was only in Tao Insight realm. But he was listed as the 49th on the blood list. The intention was self-evident. They had already regarded Lin Sun as an enemy who must be killed. It was no wonder that Zhang Sunlai was furious. Once the ranking was announced, Lin Sun would suffer many unexpected blows in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Lu Wenting smiled bitterly. The most ridiculous thing is not only this. The bounty on Child Lin on the blood list for arrest is so high that it can be compared with that of the person who ranks 10th. Who ranks 10th now? Zhang Sunlai asked. It's Qin Wenzhong, the half-step king of camp number 2. Lu Wenting said quickly. That's going too far. Zhang Sunlai scolded. He ranks 49th. But his bounty is as high as that of a top half-step king. It's crazy. Perhaps all this is because Mangio was killed by Child Lin with one arrow, which completely deterred those barbarian bastards and made them smell the danger and threat. That's why they made such an arrangement by hook or by crook. Lu Wenting analyzed. Where is he now? Zhang Sunlai asked. Still in closed-door training. Order that he is forbidden to step out of the camp for a period of time. Zhang Sunlai gave the order without hesitation. Lu Wenting knew that this was to protect Lin Sun. After all, Lin Sun was too eye-catching now. His name and the bounty appeared on the blood list for arrest. Once he appeared, the enemies would inevitably target him like a tide. But Lu Wenting sighed in his heart. He was not sure whether Lin Sun would obey the order. Chapter 717. In the last chapter, A reader suggested that Lin Sun's name in the bloodthirsty battlefield should be Lin Shi. Thanks for the correction. However, there was no way to change it. Everyone knew that no one knew the identity of Lin Sun in the isolated bloodthirsty battlefield. So, they might as well wait and see. It was dark and dim in the room. Lin Sun sat cross-legged, with a thick layer of high-grade spiritual crystal powder piled up beside him. He had been meditating for 5 days. In his chest, a white spiritual vein was enshrouded in a dreamy holy halo. Vaguely, the scene of a big abyss emerged in the holy halo. The big abyss was like a void, empty and endless. Lin Sun was meditating and exploring. In a trance, he seemed to hear an ancient and obscure sound drifting out from the depths of the big abyss. The vital energy in his entire body circulated soundlessly, and his essence, energy, and spirit were full and ethereal. His mind was clear, devoid of thoughts, and he'd completely forgotten himself. A mysterious heat flow spread out from the 4 acupoints of the heart meridian and poured into his limbs and bones, nourishing his flesh and blood and activating his potential. On the other hand, within the abode within Chen Shi's body, divine radiance surged while radiance seethed, and an ancient Tao platform emanated 3 glows that were like white jade. They revolved around the Tao platform and fluttered about, causing it to seem even more divine and magnificent. Lin Sun was unaware of all this. On the 7th day of meditation, a rustling sound came from Lin Sun, like the sound of a silkworm breaking out of a cocoon. Lin Sun's long hair fell down and then grew out at an incredible speed. It was thick and dark, shining with crystal luster, and hung down to his waist like a black waterfall. Then, Lin Sun's skin cracked and shed inch by inch, and then a new layer of skin grew out. It was crystal clear like the most perfect jade carving, and the texture of his skin was flowing with the luster of Tao. It looked soft and lustrous, but actually contained extremely terrible power. Later, a layer of holy halo appeared around Lin Sun, and the light rain flowed around him, making him look like an immortal who was about to ascend to heaven. Everything seemed to be reborn. It was nothing more than a rebirth. On the 10th day of seclusion, the changes of Lin Sun's body returned to silence, and his temperament became more and more ethereal. There was an indescribable sense of Tao around him. At this moment, his body was roaring like thunder. His internal organs, paradise, blood vessels, and bones were all resonating with a unique rhythm. The rhythm was profound, and the essence, energy, and spirit in his body were like a tsunami. They were at the peak of their power, and they were fermenting in his body. Dong, dong, dong. Even every time his heart beat, it was like a thunderclap from the 9 heavens, and it carried a powerful and abundant vitality. The guards stationed outside Lin Sun's room all trembled at this moment. They felt that their souls were hit hard by the sound of the great way. They were so uncomfortable that they almost coughed up blood. And this was just caused by a trace of qi overflowing from Lin Sun's cultivation. On the 13th day of his seclusion, the changes in Lin Sun's body also quieted down, and everything became calm. Whoosh! At this time, Lin Sun opened his eyes. At that moment, there seemed to be a pair of dazzling lightning flashing in the room, tearing the dark environment apart. Looking closely, Lin Sun's black eyes were as deep as a deep abyss, with divine light surging in them. There was a kind of terrifying momentum that seemed to be able to swallow people's souls. Unexpectedly, I have broken through by accident. Things in this world are really unpredictable and full of inconceivable flavor. A strange curve appeared at the corner of Lin Sun's mouth. At the same time, the divine light in his eyes converged, and they became calm, deep, and clear. He had broken through. Even Lin Sun didn't expect that in this seclusion, he would break through and step into the Tao insight realm by accident. It was incredible. Previously, he was prepared to accumulate enough high-rank spirit crystals before attempting to break through to the next realm. However, it was obvious that the transformation brought about by his secluded cultivation had allowed him to achieve this step ahead of time. Moreover, he did not use any high-rank spirit crystals from the beginning to the end. It should be related to the power of the spiritual vein. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Before, he had been meditating and exploring the spiritual vein, trying to master the mystery contained in it. But when he really comprehended it, Lin Sun didn't find anything more than a kind of vast, ancient and obscure Tao sound. Only now did Lin Sun realize that this meditation was not in vain. At least, his cultivation had leaped into the Tao insight realm without even being aware of it. Spiritual vein. Devouring abyss. Lin Sun took a deep breath and secretly decided that he must explore all the mysteries in the future. This kind of unparalleled talent was simply a hidden treasure in his body. If he couldn't fully excavate it, it would be a waste of God's gift. Next, Lin Sun began to feel the transformation after his promotion. My physical strength has improved by one step, and my qi and blood are abundant. I can regrow broken limbs. Even if I suffer a serious injury, I can recover quickly as long as I have enough time. With the breakthrough in cultivation and strength, if I go to kill a ruthless character like Shi Zhen, even without the help of the insignificant spiritual Bao, I can still kill him. It's a pity that my spiritual power is still stuck in the moon transformation realm. I don't know when I can cultivate the mystery of the third realm of glorious sun. Not bad, not bad. My Tao insight realm has also been refined, and the Tao of water has almost reached perfection. I only need an opportunity to reach the level of Tao insight. Carefully feeling the changes in his whole body, Lin Sun was also very happy. In this harsh and dangerous bloodthirsty battlefield, the stronger the power, the greater the chance of survival. Not long after, Lin Sun pushed the door open and immediately met a crowd of awe and fear. The guards stationed in front of Lin Sun's house were all old men in the bloodthirsty battlefield. They were all extremely fierce. But at this time, they seemed to be in awe in front of Lin Sun. "Child Lin, Lord Lu told us that when you come out, please come to the supply office for a talk," said a guard leader respectfully. "Sorry to trouble you." Lin Sun cupped his hands. During these days of closed-door cultivation, he had long noticed that these guards had been guarding his house for him. Until they saw Lin Sun off, those guards seemed to be relieved and sighed with emotion. This young man in Tao insight realm was now famous in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Overnight, he became a new star known to both the enemy and the people. He killed a half-step king with one arrow alone. He killed many powerful voodoo barbarians in the Tiger Canyon and gained a lot of military merits. He became the only one in Tao insight realm who was listed in the top 100 of the enemy's bloody wanted list. All of this was too shocking. Although it had been half a month since the incident, the heated discussion about Lin Sun was still echoing in the 8 camps of the empire. In the supply office, "Boy, you're in big trouble." As soon as he saw Lin Sun, Lu Wenting let out a sigh. "General has ordered that you should stay in the camp for a period of time from today." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "What on earth is going on?" Lu Wenting immediately told Lin Sun what had happened these days, such as the Scarlet Wanted list and the impact of the battle in the Tiger Canyon on Lin Sun. Finally, Lu Wenting said, "Now in the bloodthirsty battlefield, the top figures of voodoo barbarians and alien tribes all threatened to kill you to avenge Manjiu, the half-step king. The situation is very unfavorable for you." Lin Sun couldn't help but frown when he learned all this. "It's just a Scarlet Wanted list. Why are you so nervous? If they want to kill me, just bring it on. I'm worried about how to earn more military merit." Lu Wenting turned pale with fright and shouted, "You must not. Child Lin, don't you understand the seriousness of the matter? As long as you appear on the battlefield, you may even attract the attention and attack of Half-Step King. So what? I've killed them before," Lin Sun said casually. Lu Wenting was speechless. Indeed, Manjiu, the top half-step king of dark barbarians, was killed by Lin Sun with one arrow. But if Lin Sun left the barracks and continued to adventure on the battlefield, it would attract too many unexpected dangers and accidents. Lu Wenting didn't want to be scared anymore. Similarly, he was also very sure that General Zhang Sun Lai wouldn't agree. Child Lin, please don't make things difficult for me. Lu Wenting begged Lin Sun with a look of crying but no tears. Lin Sun finally compromised under his coaxing and pestering, but he said that he must let him step on the battlefield again when there was a chance. This made Lu Wenting secretly relieved. As long as Lin Sun agreed, he was afraid that Lin Sun would be stubborn. In addition, since I'm staying in the barracks, I can't do nothing. Lin Sun suddenly said, I want to go to the ordnance department. What? Lu Wenting's entire body stiffened as the happiness that had just arisen in his heart instantly vanished without a trace, and his expression became indeterminate. Can't this young master know his place? Why did he want to harm the ordnance department? Lu Wenting suddenly had a headache. Can't I do that? Lin Sun frowned. Okay. Lu Wenting gritted his teeth and finally agreed. At the same time, he was thinking quickly about what kind of job he should arrange for Lin Sun, which could make him behave himself and not disturb the order of the ordnance department. On this day, when the news about Lin Sun going to the ordnance department to work as an assistant to a spiritual tattooist came out, it immediately shocked everyone. All practitioners felt it absurd. How could a young talent who killed a half-step king realm suddenly become an assistant to a spiritual tattooist in the blink of an eye? It was not overkill, but it didn't match at all. Many practitioners didn't believe it and thought it was too absurd. Even a group of spiritual tattooists in the ordnance department was speechless when they heard the news. What on earth did Lu Wenting want to do? Anyway, when Lin Sun appeared in the ordnance office, the news, which was regarded as absurd, was finally proved to be true. All of a sudden, many practitioners in the entire Camp 7 were stunned. It turned out to be true. Chapter 7:18. Do you want this boy to be my assistant? Ho ho, that's impossible. When Lin Sun came to the ordnance office for registration for the first time, he was immediately opposed. The speaker was Master Ing, who was highly respected in Camp 7 and whose words carried enormous weight. All the spiritual tattooists in the ordnance office followed Master Ying's lead. He was also the person in charge of the ordnance office. At this moment, Master Ing was sitting behind the desk with his eyes slightly narrowed. He was reading the scroll in his hand without any expression. He didn't even raise his head and didn't care about Lin Sun, who was standing there. All the nearby spiritual tattooists were watching the fun with their arms crossed. They looked at Lin Sun with a playful expression, as if they were joking. Outside the ordnance department, the practitioners who had heard the news were all extremely shocked. Grandmaster Ing did not give them any face at all. He did not even use any tactful words and directly rejected them. Child Lin was a young talent who could kill a half-step king with one arrow, but he was rejected by Master Ing, which was beyond everyone's expectation. But thinking about it carefully, these practitioners could understand that Master Ing was an experienced spiritual tattooist who was stationed in Camp 7 all year round. Over the years, he had helped repair the weapons and equipment of numerous practitioners, so he was extremely respected and supported. With Master Ying's identity and status, he really didn't need to give face to Lin Sun. The atmosphere seemed to be very stiff for a moment. Lu Wenting, who came with Lin Sun to report, looked very embarrassed at the moment. He didn't expect that Master Ing would refuse him so simply and rudely, which made him feel ashamed. Lu Wenting coughed and said, Master Ing, it's just an assistant position. I guarantee that Child Lin is absolutely qualified for it and will never interfere with the normal operation of the ordnance office. Humph! Master Ing snorted coldly and didn't even bother to raise his head. There were so many eyes on him, but he was ignored here. This made Lu Wenting a little embarrassed and angry. His face was burning. Lin Sun, on the other hand, looked at the surroundings of the ordnance office with great interest with his hands behind his back, as if everything had nothing to do with him. He looked calm and casual. But the atmosphere was very dull and stiff. Outside the ordnance department, more and more practitioners came after hearing the news. They were all curious about why a young talent like Lin Sun would come to the ordnance department to work as an assistant of Master Eagle. It was undoubtedly absurd and also very interesting. However, when they saw that Lin Sun was rejected as soon as he arrived, these practitioners all laughed. In the entire Camp 7, perhaps only a highly respected old man like Grandmaster Ing would dare to be so fearless. This was his confidence. He couldn't help but be impressed. Soaring Eagle. Lu Wenting seemed to be annoyed and called him by his name. This matter is of great importance and has been personally approved by General Zhang Sun. Aren't you being a little obstinate by doing this? Grandmaster Ing slowly raised his head. His face was expressionless as he stared at Lu Wenting. I'm obstinate? You're asking a kid who hasn't even grown his hair to be my assistant. Isn't that just messing around? What do you mean by fooling around? Lu Wenting was a little flustered and exasperated. He felt that this old guy was as stubborn as a donkey. Grandmaster Ing said calmly, "Don't talk nonsense. If you want me to agree, just let him be his assistant and I'll leave the ordnance department." All the other spiritual tattooists present turned pale with fright. Without Grandmaster Ing, the ordnance department would lose its soul. Absolutely not. They all dissuaded Grandmaster Ing. Even the practitioners watching the fun outside the door were a little nervous. If Grandmaster Ing left, who would repair their weapons and equipment in the future? Now, even Lu Wenting hesitated. His face was cloudy. To be honest, he was extremely against Lin Sun's coming to work in the ordnance department. However, he had agreed, but was rejected by Grandmaster Ing, which made him a little angry and embarrassed. That was why he tried so hard to fight for a chance for Lin Sun just now. However, when Grandmaster Ing showed such a resolute attitude, Lu Wenting also wanted to give up. If Lin Sun forced Grandmaster Ing to leave, the loss would outweigh the gain. How about we change positions? Lu Wenting asked Lin Sun. But Lin Sun smiled, no. If I can't even be a spiritual tattooist's assistant, I will be too ashamed to go back to the Empire in the future. What a joke. He was the youngest Grandmaster of spiritual tattoos in the Empire, and he had refined real armors of spiritual tattoos. If it was known that he was even refused the position of spiritual tattooist's assistant, it would be a big joke. However, his words sounded arrogant and harsh to the ears of others. Many spiritual tattooists immediately snorted. Ho ho, do you really think that you can do whatever you want after killing a half-step king? Do you know what spiritual tattoos are? Young man, you may have amazing fighting power and superb talent, but you may not be qualified for this position. Please behave yourself. Don't be stubborn. Leave now. Some practitioners outside the ordnance department couldn't help saying, Child Lin, it's okay if you can't do it. You are best at fighting and killing enemies. You are really not suitable for this position. As for Grandmaster Ing, he squinted at the scroll in his hand with a leisurely look and didn't care about Lin Sun at all. Lin Sun had a strange and absurd feeling in his heart. If this scene was seen by those spiritual tattooists in the Forbidden City of the Empire, what would they think? If he left like this today, it would become a stain that couldn't be erased in the future when this matter was spread out. Abi, give me your weapon. Lin Sun glanced at Abi, who was standing outside the ordnance department, and waved his hand. Ah! Abi was a little confused. She didn't know what Lin Sun was going to do. But out of a kind of support for a friend, she stepped forward after being stunned for a while and handed over the dark steel heavy sword in her hand. Lin Sun was also stunned for a while. Then he remembered that the giant hammer that Abi originally owned had been destroyed in the battle in the Tiger Canyon. Fine, I'll help you refine this sword again. Lin Sun picked up the dark steel heavy sword and looked at it for a while. Then he had a plan in mind. What? You said you want to refine this sword again? A spiritual tattooist cried, and almost thought he had heard it wrong. The others were also stunned. Refine the treasure again? This was an extremely difficult thing for a spiritual tattooist. After all, the treasure had been formed and the spiritual tattoo formation inside it had been completely stabilized. To refine it again, it would take a lot of effort and energy, which was even more difficult than refining a new treasure. This was the common sense in the spiritual tattooist circle. Therefore, when they heard Lin Sun's words, those spiritual tattooists were so shocked and almost thought Lin Sun was crazy. Child Lin, how can you show off in this kind of thing? I know you are not convinced, but, alas, forget it. Lu Wenting was shocked and hurriedly stopped Lin Sun. He thought Lin Sun was trying to show off because he was ashamed and angry. Once Lin Sun really did that, he would definitely be a laughingstock and have an adverse impact on his reputation. Hey, you want to do porcelain work without a diamond? You are really young and impetuous. You can't stand the provocation. A spiritual tattooist sneered. Lin Sun smiled and said calmly, to put it bluntly, even if a spiritual rune master wants to be my assistant, I still have to weigh his ability and see if he is qualified. But obviously, you guys won't believe me. Since this is the case, let's see whether I'm the one who doesn't know what's good for me or you guys are blind. These words were not sonorous or passionate, but very calm, but like a stone, it stirred up 1,000 ripples and caused an uproar. Arrogant! Too arrogant! Among those present, only Master Ying was a senior spiritual tattooist, but this guy said he was not even qualified to be his assistant, which was too arrogant. Even Master Ying's face darkened at this moment. He couldn't keep his original calmness. He dropped the scroll in his hand and looked at Lin Sun coldly. Little guy, spiritual tattoos are completely different from martial arts. What you said is equal to provocation. Lin Sun, don't be impulsive. Lu Wenting was very anxious. If Master Ying was annoyed, even General Zhangsun would not be able to help. This was the special feature of spiritual tattooists. With the refining methods they mastered, even the life-death realm had to be polite to them. What was more, in the bloodthirsty battlefield, spiritual tattooists were the scarcest group of people. Their status was extremely special and transcendent, and no one could blaspheme or offend them. Lin Sun smiled and didn't bother to explain. He walked to the area near the ordnance department, where there was a fiercely burning bronze stove. Beside it was a table, on which were inscribing pens, spiritual inks, and various spiritual materials. This was the refining place of a spiritual tattooist in the ordnance department. But now it was empty, so Lin Sun directly occupied it. Those spiritual tattooists all looked livid. They had given Lin Sun enough face, but this guy was stubborn and insisted on doing this, which made them a little annoyed. What did it mean to be ungrateful? This was it. Don't stop him. I'd like to see what tricks you want to play. Even a spiritual tattooist is not qualified to be your assistant? This is definitely the most ridiculous joke I've heard this year. Master Ying also opened his mouth with a sneer. Obviously, he thought Lin Sun was overestimating himself and wanted to see how Lin Sun would make a fool of himself in front of so many people. Alas! Lu Wenting sighed in his heart. Now it was over. It was hard to clean up the mess. General Zhangsun would probably get angry again. Why was this guy so restless? Whether going to the battlefield or coming to the ordnance department, he would not be satisfied until he made some trouble. Lu Wenting felt a headache coming on. The practitioners nearby also looked at each other. Did Child Lin really intend to be stubborn to the end? Wasn't he afraid of making a big joke and becoming a laughing stock in the end? Chapter 719. When Lin Sun started to take action, the annoyed and disdainful spiritual tattooists were slightly stunned. They suddenly found that when Lin was refining the dark steel heavy sword again, His technique was extremely skillful and smooth, as natural as floating clouds and flowing water. Even there was an indescribable sense of beauty, which attracted people involuntarily. The spiritual tattooists looked at each other in dismay. They all felt strange and couldn't help holding their breath and continuing to watch. Lin Sun didn't show any profound and obscure skills. He just refined a heaven-rank low-grade heavy sword again, which didn't require much effort for him. His movements were skillful. His 10 fingers were as agile as butterflies, and there was a sense of calmness between his eyebrows. In his hand, a dark steel heavy sword was thrown into the furnace to be smelted, and then it was reinscribed with a spiritual tattoo formation. The whole process was smooth and steady. Not only those spiritual tattooists, but also those onlookers opened their eyes wide and were firmly attracted by Lin Sun's movements. Even if they didn't understand spiritual tattoos, they could see that the skills Lin Sun showed at this moment had a unique rhythm, which couldn't be matched by ordinary spiritual tattooists at all. Is he also a spiritual tattooist? Many people were shocked. Originally, they subconsciously thought that Lin Sun might have an unattainable talent in cultivation at such a young age, but it never occurred to them that he might also be a spiritual tattooist. Therefore, when they learned that Lin Sun suddenly came to the ordnance office to work as Master Ying's assistant, it caused so much uproar and curiosity. But now, Lin Sun's actions seemed to prove that he was not as simple as a young talent in Tao Insight realm. Lu Wenting was thinking about how to clean up this farce with a sad face. But when he caught a glimpse of people nearby looking at Lin Sun in astonishment, he couldn't help being stunned. What was going on? Lu Wenting couldn't help looking up and saw Lin Sun holding an inscribing pen and dipping it in spiritual ink to inscribe spiritual tattoos on the newly refined dark steel heavy sword. His back was perfectly straight, and the tip of his brush was like a gurgling spring, painting a dense and mysterious spiritual tattoo pattern. Merely looking at it was pleasing to the eye, and it gave birth to an indescribable feeling of shock and amazement. That sort of unique bearing was like the bearing of a grandmaster. Lu Wenting was also dumbfounded. He felt that his brain was not enough to process everything. Previously, he was extremely opposed to Lin Sun coming to the ordnance department. He was worried that Lin Sun would make trouble here and interfere with the normal operation of the department. But who would have thought that Lin Sun, who was looked down upon by everyone, would slap all of them in the face with his actions? How could someone who knew nothing about spiritual runes have such attainments in refining weapons? Even a spiritual tattoo master couldn't do it as easily as he did. Master Ying was looking down and reading the book in his hand. Lin Sun's stubbornness made him disdainful and annoyed. He had already thought of an excuse to drive Lin Sun away the moment he made a fool of himself. He didn't hate or target Lin Sun, but he didn't want to see an ignorant teenager come to the ordnance department to make trouble. Master Ying, you'd better have a look. A spiritual tattooist next to him swallowed hard and reminded him in a low voice. Oh, he's retreating in the face of difficulties. He's smart. Let me see his expression now. While speaking, Master Ying raised his head and looked at Lin Sun in the distance. With just a glance, he was stunned and his face suddenly changed. Master Ying, have you also seen it? There's something wrong with it, the spiritual tattooist next to him said bitterly. It was more than a little wrong. It was simply too wrong. Master Ying seemed to lose his composure at this moment. He suddenly stood up with his eyes full of shock and murmured, This technique. He seemed to be so shocked that he couldn't say a word. This scene immediately attracted the attention of the nearby spiritual tattooists and practitioners. They all looked sideways with bewilderment and shock. Even Master Ying lost his composure like this. Could it be, at this moment, Master Ying seemed to have held back for a long time and finally spat out a sentence with difficulty. This is the attainment of a guru. A single sentence seemed to have drained all the strength in his body, causing the blood to drain from his face, causing it to turn pale, and his body to be on the verge of collapse. Did he just refuse and exclude a guru in front of him? At the thought of this, Master Ying's heart trembled and he wanted to slap himself. He felt extremely remorseful. If he had been more polite and asked more patiently just now, would such a thing have happened? Master Ying's eyes were absent-minded, as if he had lost his soul. In the spiritual tattooist circle, there had always been a universally recognized iron rule, that was, a guru should not be insulted, because such a person was too transcendent and lofty, like a divine dragon in the sky, and had long set foot on the unprecedented peak of spiritual tattoos. How could such a person be slandered and blasphemed by any random spiritual tattooist? If this matter was spread out, Shinkong would even be despised and hostile by all the spiritual tattooists in the empire. Clang! A clear sound surrounded by killing intent rang out, shocking all the people present. They woke up from all kinds of thoughts and fixed their eyes on Lin Sun's hand. A dark steel heavy sword floated in the void. The sword was as black as ink, releasing a dazzling luster like a cold star. It floated there, but there was a faint killing intent spreading, which made many practitioners feel stinging in their eyes and chilling their skin. All of a sudden, all the people present were shocked. The dark steel heavy sword was just a low-grade heaven rank, which was not very precious. But in just 10 minutes, after Lin Sun re-refined it, the sword seemed to have been reborn and glowed with a brand-new appearance. The top-grade heaven rank! A spiritual tattooist cried out in shock. All the people present were silent. A low-grade heaven rank spiritual sword suddenly transformed into the top-grade heaven rank, which meant that its power had been improved by more than one level. All this happened in 10 minutes, which made all the people present absent-minded. It was no different from turning something rotten into something magical. Was this young man really a spiritual tattooist? Little Eagle Shinkong, please forgive me for offending Grandmaster Lin so rudely. Amidst this silence, Grandmaster Ing suddenly took a deep breath, stepped forward, and bowed respectfully. His face was filled with shame and fear. All of a sudden, all the people present became more and more silent, and the way they looked at Lin soon changed. A guru! He was really a guru. But such a young man had already stepped into the realm of guru in the field of spiritual tattoos. This fact was too shocking. Greetings, Master Lin. Other spiritual tattooists nearby hurried to bow to Lin Sun. They looked ashamed and uneasy. They had rebuked and attacked Lin Sun several times before, which made them feel regretful and scared at the moment. The practitioners who came to watch were completely dumbfounded. Today they had come to watch the fun. They had never thought that things would take such a big turn. The young man who had killed a half-step king with an arrow turned out to be a grand master of spiritual tattoos. They didn't expect such a result. I've found a treasure. Damn it, an unintentional willow grows into a shade. Lu Wenting shouted in his heart, trembling with excitement. If a young spiritual tattooist was in charge of the ordnance office of Camp No. 7, the benefits would be absolutely immeasurable. However, when Lu Wenting thought that he strongly opposed Lin Sun to work in the ordnance office, he wanted to slap himself. He was really blind. I once said that I would help you refine the treasure again. Have a look and see if you are satisfied with the sword now. Lin Sun handed the dark steel heavy sword back to Abi and said with a smile. Ah! Abi woke up from her stupor. Looking at the brand new dark steel heavy sword in her hand, she was stunned with an indescribable excitement and surprise in her heart. The other cultivators nearby all looked at Abi with envious eyes. This chick was really lucky. From this day on, Lin Sun was in charge of the ordnance office. His days were very busy and fulfilling. Since his identity as a spiritual tattoo grandmaster was spread out, many practitioners would come every day because of his fame. Some wanted to make friends with Lin Sun, and some hoped that Lin Sun could refine the treasure for them. Therefore, the ordnance office became more and more lively. Early in the morning every day, there were many practitioners waiting in line, hoping to get the opportunity to refine the weapon by Lin Sun himself. At first, Lin Sun didn't refuse anyone, but soon he couldn't bear it. There were too many practitioners coming to ask for help, which made him unable to take care of them all. In the end, he set the rule that he would only accept 3 refining tasks a day, and only solve the refining tasks that other spiritual tattooists couldn't solve. In this way, Lin Sun was much more relaxed. He went to the ordnance office to refine weapons during the day, and took time to practice and study martial arts at night. Occasionally, when he was free, he would find some acquaintances to drink and chat with and learn about various news in the bloodthirsty battlefield. It was worth mentioning that when General Sun Lai learned that Lin Sun was a spiritual tattooist, he was shocked at first and smashed a table with a slap. Then his expression began to change. He angrily cursed the bloodthirsty king as an old bastard who didn't even tell him such important news. Then he couldn't help but grin. His laughter, like a landslide and a tsunami, resounded through the whole Camp 7, making all the practitioners surprised and confused. They almost thought that General Sun Lai was possessed by the devil that night. In front of Lin Sun's house, under the dark night sky, a banquet had just ended. Huang, the chief guard of the camp, was drunk again and babbled something that even he himself couldn't understand. Abi's pretty face was red and hot, and her eyes were blurred. She shouted to compete with Lin Sun in drinking, and finally fell into Lin Sun's arms. Lu Wenting was humming a tune, which was about the general dying in battle and the warrior returning after 3 years. The tune was sad and low. In the end, everyone dispersed because there were still many things to do tomorrow. In the bloodthirsty battlefield, as long as the enemy didn't die, the killing would never stop. As practitioners of the Empire, what they had to do every day was almost related to killing the enemy. Lu Wen wasn't able to return to the campsite before nightfall today, so he probably won't be able to return anymore. Before leaving, Hu Tong left behind these words. It couldn't be said to be sentimental, and he seemed to be very calm. Chapter 720. Death and life were the eternal topics in the bloodthirsty battlefield. These days, although Lin Sun stayed in the ordnance office every day and never went out, he also learned that many practitioners of the Empire died on the battlefield every day and never came back, like Lu Wen. This young overmatch who had repeatedly provoked, rejected and despised Lin Sun might never show up again in the future. Was he going to die like this? Lin Sun was a little upset. He was a little annoyed with this person, but when he learned that this person might disappear from the world like this, Lin Sun felt a little empty in his heart. Another few days passed. At the party and drinking in the evening, Hu Tong brought some new faces, while several old faces of the Star Frost Mercenary Regiment disappeared. Come on, drink. Let me introduce you to my new members. Hu Tong didn't explain anything. Abi was very silent, with red and swollen eyes and a very low mood. She kept drinking wildly. Lin Sun knew that those old members of the Star Frost Mercenary Regiment would never come back. This was the bloodthirsty battlefield. Every day there would be familiar faces disappearing. Perhaps they would never appear again. Their final destination was the battlefield. Perhaps even their corpses wouldn't be able to survive, let alone leave behind a grave. When you get used to death, you will understand the importance of living. This was what Lu Wenting said after drinking. Lin Sun was thinking that if he wanted to end all this, there might be only one way, to eradicate all the enemies. But for now, this idea seemed to be very unrealistic. The Empire and the Voodoo barbarians had been fighting for thousands of years, but so far they hadn't achieved this. Did they not want to? No, they couldn't do it. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. The prosperity and stability of the Empire today were also exchanged with the lives and blood of these practitioners fighting in the front line. I'm willing to exchange this for a treasure. I only ask Grandmaster Lin to refine a treasure for me. On this day, Lin Sun had just finished his 3rd refining task in the ordnance office. When he was about to leave, a practitioner suddenly came to visit him. This man was a thin middle-aged man with a sharp face, cold and resolute. There was an unconcealable bloody murderous aura all over him. His name was Yen Feng, and he was an extremely famous loner in Camp 7. He was at the peak of the reincarnation development realm, and he was ranked 77th on the enemy's blood list wanted list. Although Yen Feng's ranking was much lower than Lin Sun's, it was different. Yen Feng was famous for his military exploits and was regarded as an extremely dangerous person by his enemies. On the other hand, Lin Sun had become famous for killing a half-step king with one arrow. This was the difference between the two. Yen Feng held a gray stone in his hand. It was about the size of a fist. Upon closer inspection, there were faint golden patterns on the surface of the stone, making it look very mysterious. Is this a golden-patterned magical jade? A spiritual tattooist came over and asked in surprise. This was a good treasure, a rare spiritual material for forging armors with spiritual tattoos. Its value was immeasurable and extremely rare. Yen Feng ignored him and stared at Lin Sun. I've already completed my task for today. You can come back another day, Lin Sun said casually. He had already made an appointment with Lu Wenting, Hu Tong, and the others to have a drinking party tonight. However, Yen Feng blocked his way and said with a serious expression, Grandmaster Lin, I'm in urgent need of it. Please help me this time. I'll repay this favor. Lin Sun frowned. He could tell that if he didn't agree today, Yen Feng would definitely not give up. Humph. Countless practitioners come to Grandmaster Lin for help like you every day. Do you think that Grandmaster Lin can make an exception for you with a golden-patterned magical jade? Leave now and don't disturb Grandmaster Lin. Otherwise, if General Zhang Sun finds out, you'll suffer a lot. The spiritual tattooist at the side stood out and scolded Yen Feng. Although Yen Feng's reputation was extremely prominent, these spiritual tattooists weren't afraid of him. Yen Feng instantly fell silent. A hint of gloom and disappointment flashed across his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, Fine, I'll leave now and not disturb you anymore. But, speaking of this, he pondered for a moment. Finally, he gritted his teeth and passed the golden-patterned magical jade to Lin Sun. This item is useless to me. I'll give it to Grandmaster Lin. After saying that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun was stunned and asked, Where are you going? The battlefield. It's going to be dark soon. I have to go. My brother is still waiting for me to rescue him. He has a wife and children to take care of at home. He can't die. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and said, Show me your treasure. Yen Feng froze in the distance and seemed to be in disbelief. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and don't waste time. This is the first time that Grandmaster Lin has made an exception for you. The spiritual tattooist at the side reminded him loudly. Thanks a lot. Yen Feng turned around and bowed to Lin Sun. There was an unconcealable excitement and gratitude in his expression. The treasure that Yen Feng wanted to repair was an iron spear. It was a heaven-grade treasure that had been severely damaged. It was hard to believe that such a top figure in the reincarnation developing realm and a ruthless figure in the top 100 of the blood list wanted list would have such a shabby weapon. Without hesitation, Lin Sun took action after a short glance. Moreover, Lin Sun seemed to be very serious this time. His speed was also much faster than before. The spiritual tattooists nearby were dazzled and shocked. In less than a quarter of an hour, the iron spear looked brand new. Not only was it completely repaired, but its grade was also greatly improved. This moved Yen Feng. He was overjoyed and grateful to Lin Sun. It's more important to save him, Lin Sun said casually. What's more, I've received an incredible treasure from you. It's worth it to refine this spear for you. It's just a piece of golden vein jade, Yen Feng said. No, it's not that simple. Lin Sun's eyes were deep. As soon as he said that, the spiritual tattooists nearby became curious. Was there something special about this item? Crack. Lin Sun pinched it casually, and the golden patterned jade suddenly broke into pieces. The The stone chips fell down, and at the same time, a glimmer of silver star-like luster flowed out. This is... The spiritual tattooists widened their eyes when they saw a pigeon egg-sized jade in Lin Sun's palm. It was silver and dazzling like a star. Even Yen Feng was stunned. How could he have imagined that there would be such a mysterious gem hidden within the golden vein mysterious jade? Crack! To everyone's surprise, Lin Sun exerted strength in his hand and crushed the silver gem. In the rain of light, a green leaf that was as slender as a grass stalk came into everyone's sight. The leaf was like a copper coin and was only the size of a melon seed shell. However, it flowed with a green glow that dyed the void green. It was so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. At the same time, a strand of copious and pure vitality effused out, causing the spirits of everyone in the surroundings to be refreshed and feel refreshed. In an instant they felt as if they were floating in the air. The spiritual tattooists were completely dumbfounded. A piece of golden vein jade was so mysterious. No one could imagine that there was such a green leaf full of vitality in its core. There's a treasure among treasures. This item is destined to be extraordinary. Even Yen Feng was surprised and realized that this item wasn't simple. If you regret it, I can return it to you. Lin Sun looked at Yen Feng. Yen Feng waved his hand and said, "This treasure was discovered by Grandmaster Lin. It has nothing to do with me." "Can you tell me where did you get it from?" Lin Sun asked. "Mulberry Forest." After saying that, Yen Feng cupped his hands and bade farewell. He wanted to sneak into the battlefield again before night fell to complete a dangerous and arduous task. He might die, but he didn't regret it. That's how the cultivators of the Empire should be. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. Even though he knew he couldn't do it, he still did it. After returning to his room, Lin Sun took out the green leaf that flowed with a brilliant green glow. In an instant, the dark room was lit up. What a strong vitality! Lin Sun sensed it and couldn't help but be moved. There was actually the power of Great Way flowing in the vitality. It was extremely mysterious and unpredictable. How could such a strong and mysterious vitality be born in the bloodthirsty battlefield where the spiritual energy was exhausted and it was almost like an abandoned land? Clang! Lin Sun took out the broken blade. The surface of the broken blade trembled slightly and let out a low and clear cry that sounded like it was eager. Before discovering the mysterious leaf hidden in the golden-patterned magical jade, Lin Sun realized the extraordinariness of the golden-patterned magical jade because of the movement of the broken blade. Sure enough, the trembling and longing of the broken sword at the moment made Lin Sun sure of this. What is this? How can it have the power of Great Way and have such strong vitality? The leaf was only the size of a melon seed shell, but the vitality was so abundant that Lin Sun was shocked. Clatter! In the end, Lin Sun tentatively put the leaf in front of the broken blade. The broken blade emitted an obscure wave and drowned the leaf in an instant, absorbing its vitality crazily. Lin Sun also noticed that the extremely vague Taoist patterns on the surface of the broken blade began to become clear little by little. Although it was only a rough outline, as long as this situation continued, these mysterious Taoist patterns would be completely revealed sooner or later. The broken blade was originally incomplete. Could it be that the reason why it has been silent is that it lacks this vitality to repair itself? An idea occurred to Lin Sun. Unfortunately, the Taoist patterns on the surface of the broken blade did not completely appear until the vitality contained in the leaf was absorbed. They were just a little clearer than before, but still could not be completely seen through and understood. It seems that I have to go to the mulberry forest. Maybe I can take this opportunity to make the broken blade transform completely. Lin Sun took a deep breath and made a decision. This was a rare opportunity. It would be a pity to miss it. He had been in the ordnance department for nearly a month. Although he was busy every day, he had long felt that this kind of life was too monotonous and boring. The next morning. What? You want to go to the damn mulberry forest? Do you know how dangerous it is? It is enough to make life-death realm kings change their expressions. No, I can't promise you this. When Lu Wenting heard that Lin Sun wanted to go to the mulberry forest, he was immediately strongly opposed and even frightened. Chapter 721. The mulberry forest was a place of great danger in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Sounds of nature too, neither the Empire nor the voodoo barbarians dared to approach that area, even if they fought fiercely. It was called the Devil Land, stained with God's blood, mysterious and terrible. For thousands of years, many big shots had died there and could never return. Knowing this, Lin understood why Lu Wenting strongly opposed him to go there. I want to have a look. If it doesn't work, I won't enter rashly. After thinking for a while, Lin decided to have a look. Lu Wenting frowned and tried his best to persuade Lin, but failed. Finally, he had to ask Zhang Sunlai for instructions. Did he also hear something? Zhang Sunlai was surprised at first when he learned about it. According to what he knew, there was news recently that there was a phenomenon in the mulberry forest. It was very likely that a great treasure would appear. It could be a sacred object left behind from ancient times, or it could be some rare precious medicine that was about to appear. Now, some top big shots in the 8 camps of the Empire were ready to make a move and pay attention to all this. Even on the side of voodoo barbarians, many big shots had already moved to the mulberry forest after hearing the news. General, what do you think? Lu Wenting couldn't help asking. Even I dare not go there rashly. He is just a young man in Tao Insight Realm. Why should he go there? Is he tired of living? Zhang Sunlai flatly refused. Nowadays, the mulberry forest had become the eye of the storm in the bloodthirsty battlefield, attracting many old monsters. If Lin showed up, it was absolutely no different from courting death. Report. At this moment, a subordinate came to report with sweat all over his head. General, bad news. Child Lin just exchanged all his military merits for high-rank spiritual crystals in the supply office and then left the camp directly. What? Lu Wenting was stiff all over. How audacious! Zhang Sunlai was also seething with anger. Why didn't you stop him? Lu Wenting roared with blue veins bulging on his forehead. We dare not. The subordinate looked aggrieved. Now, Lin was not only a young talent who killed a half-step king practitioner, but also a spiritual tattoo grandmaster, who had an extremely high status in the Camp 7. Who dared to stop him at this time? This boy is just making trouble for me. Zhang Sunlai stamped his feet angrily and shouted, "Hurry up! Send someone to chase after him. You must stop him for me." Just a quarter of an hour later, a subordinate came to report that the dispatch team searched for Lin Sun several times, but they couldn't find any trace of Lin Sun and finally returned without any success. This caused Zhang Sunlai and Lu Wenting to feel extremely troubled. This guy is too bold. I'm afraid that he doesn't know that because of his identity as a spiritual tattoo guru, the voodoo barbarian bastards have already raised his ranking on the blood list from the 49th to the 18th. Moreover, the bounty is so high that it can be compared to the top 5 characters. Running to the mulberry forest at this time, isn't that courting death? Zhang Sunlai had a terrible headache. Lu Wenting was also exasperated. But there was nothing they could do in the end. Lin Sun had left, and it was impossible to stop him. The mulberry forest was located thousands of miles away from Camp 7. Lin Sun went out in the early morning and rushed all the way. On the way, he was besieged by strong voodoo barbarians and killed all of them. He even didn't bother to collect the trophies. Storage treasures couldn't be used in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Carrying the trophies in the luggage was not enough and space was limited, which would affect the next action. Even so, Lin Sun's luggage was still full with nearly 4,000 high-grade spiritual crystals, which he exchanged with the military merit points he had accumulated these days. Moreover, it was only a part of it. Most of it was hidden in the camp. This time, Lin Sun had planned to fight on the battlefield for many days. Even if the bloodthirsty battlefield at night was extremely terrible, he had to do so in order to explore the mystery of the mulberry forest. The reason was that the mulberry forest was located in a remote area. Even if everything went well, it was impossible for him to return to the camp when the night came. 8 hours later. The world was gloomy and the sky was covered by a haze. The smell of blood and decay in the air became extremely strong, even a little choking and nauseating. On the distant horizon, blood was faintly steaming, dyeing the world dark red. Whoosh! Lin soon moved like lightning. He carried the luggage on his back, carried the broken sword on his waist, and held the insignificant bow and the blue sky arrow in his hands. He was alert and cautious. On the way before, when he passed by a dry riverbed, a huge black hole suddenly appeared on the ground, spitting out a horrible devouring power. If he hadn't dodged in time, he would have been involved in it. This made Lin soon break out in a cold sweat. The more he realized the horror of the bloodthirsty battlefield, the more vigilant and careful he was along the way. What? Suddenly Lin soon stopped. There was a fierce sound of fighting in the far distance. Obviously, there was a battle going on. Yen Feng. When Lin soon approached quietly, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes. He was surprised to find that among the practitioners of the Empire who were fighting, one was Yen Feng, the top practitioner of reincarnation developing realm in Camp 7. It was a piece of golden jade given by Yen Feng that let Lin soon find the mysterious leaf full of vitality, so he decided to explore the mulberry forest. Yen Feng was not in a good situation at this time. He was besieged by 3 voodoo barbarians with the strength of spiritual awakening realm. Moreover, he was carrying a practitioner on his back, which put him in a dangerous situation where he was completely suppressed. There were many wounds on his body and blood was gurgling. Bang! 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 Without hesitation, Lin soon pulled the insignificant bow to the fullest, and 3 invisible spiritual arrows shot out almost in an instant. Although Lin soon didn't use the blue sky arrow, the power of the insignificant bow should not be underestimated. Otherwise, Lin soon would not have been so powerful in the Tiger Canyon. Puff! Without any accident, under the sudden attack, a strong spiritual awakening practitioner on the battlefield was caught off guard. His chest was immediately pierced with a string of scarlet blood. Half of his body was blown up and he screamed miserably. He was nailed to the ground in the distance by the terrible penetrating force. Almost at the same time, the other 2 strong spiritual awakening practitioners' shoulder blades were broken, and the other's thigh was pierced. They all screamed in horror and anger. This series of actions happened too fast. Who could imagine that there would be 3 almost invisible spiritual arrows suddenly falling from the sky? Who could have imagined that the might of the spiritual arrow would be so terrifying? At this moment, Yen Feng's combat effectiveness and decisiveness showed. In the face of such an accident, he just narrowed his eyes and rushed forward without hesitation. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he stabbed the iron spear in his hand continuously. His movements were clean, fast, and accurate. Puff, puff. The 3 spiritual awakening practitioners who had been seriously injured were killed on the spot before they could struggle. Their blood stained the ground. Only when he saw Lin soon lend a hand did Yen Feng reveal a wisp of surprise, and he was slightly stunned. The rumor was true. It was not impossible for him to kill a half-step king with this kind of archery. What? Grandmaster Lin is going to the mulberry forest? After expressing his gratitude to Lin Sun, Yen Feng's face suddenly changed when he learned that Lin Sun was going to the mulberry forest. He hurriedly stopped Lin Sun. Absolutely not. Why? Lin Sun wanted to hear Yen Feng's opinion. Yen Feng obtained that golden jade from the mulberry forest. Naturally, Yen Feng must have some understanding of that place of great danger. In the past, we might be able to take the risk and enter. But recently, the mulberry forest has become a storm of bloody conflicts. Rumor has it that a great opportunity is about to appear, attracting many old monsters to come here. Not only the empires, but also the voodoo barbarians and foreign tribes. They are determined to get this great opportunity. Yan Feng's expression was solemn as he told Lin Sun that the mulberry forest was already extremely dangerous. Now that many old monsters were involved, it made the mulberry forest extremely grim and terrifying. Opportunity? Lin Sun frowned. This was really troublesome. He had already experienced the battle for opportunities in the demonic Saint's secret land. It could be said to be a disaster of slaughter, and blood flowed like a river. According to Yan Feng, even life-death realm kings might encounter unpredictable dangers in the mulberry forest. Moreover, in order to seize the opportunity, the practitioners of the Celestial Empire and the voodoo barbarians had numerous bloody conflicts. Corpses were piled up everywhere, the earth was dyed red, and the killing intent was soaring. Lin Sun listened carefully and understood all this. He had never expected such a situation before he went out. However, since he was here, he couldn't go back halfway. He had to go and have a look. As far as I know, the voodoo barbarians have the upper hand. They have sent 3 barbarian kings who have been famous for many years. They are the fire barbarian Yen Qiong King, the gold barbarian Gold Pu King, and the thunder barbarian Thunder Sky King. Other than them, there are also many half-step kings and spirit awakening realm old monsters who have arrived. Meanwhile, on our empire's side, we only have General Xiaojie from the 4th camp and General Xiexian from the 6th camp. There are also many top half-step king warriors and reincarnation developing realm warriors, but in terms of power we are obviously at a disadvantage. Seeing that Lin Sun was determined to go, Yan Feng couldn't dissuade him. He could only tell Lin Sun everything he knew. According to what Yan Feng said, the battle had become more and more intense recently. There were even many half-step kings who were severely injured, and the number of cultivators who had died was uncountable. Moreover, in the next few days, there would be a peerless battle. General Xiaojie of the Empire would fight with Fire Barbarian King Yan Qiong. Before this, these kings had already fought each other many times, yet a victor had never been determined. However, along with the appearance of the enormous fortune that was about to descend into the world within the mulberry forest, the curtains to the true battle between kings would definitely be drawn. What is this opportunity? Why are the kings willing to fight a bloody battle? Lin Sun became more curious. It is said that this opportunity hides a big secret about the divine path. It is also said that when this opportunity comes, many incredible treasures and opportunities will be unearthed in the mulberry forest. Yan Feng told him the details. Chapter 722. The mulberry forest was located in an abyss. No one knew how big it was or how deep it was. For thousands of years, countless powerhouses from the Empire, the voodoo barbarians and the alien tribes had explored it, but none of them could see the whole picture of the mulberry forest. Sounds of nature too, it was so big and unfathomable that people even suspected that the end of it might lead to another world. Now, with the frequent abnormal phenomena in the mulberry forest, it was regarded as a sign that a great chance was about to appear. It might be related to the secret of the divine way, and many incredible treasures and opportunities might be unearthed. Knowing this, Lin Sun finally understood why there was such a fierce and bloody conflict. Everything was for the chance. It's very scary there. There are even legendary demonic spirits. The deeper you go, the more mysterious and dangerous it is. Yan Feng looked solemn. A few days ago, there was news that King Yen Qiong of the Fire Barbarians found a remnant of the fallen sun in there. There's still a trace of fire essence of sun left in it with an amazing aura. Our empire's great general Xiexian had also speculated that there was an ancient palace standing tall in the depths of the mulberry forest. Unfortunately, he was unable to accurately sense its location because it was too vast and boundless, covered in dense fog. Even, speaking of this, Yan Feng wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Even what? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and asked. Some practitioners even swore that they saw a white cicada in the mulberry forest. It was only the size of a baby's palm, but it was surrounded by the light of ascension. The cicada shrieked and destroyed everything within 100 square kilometers. Yan Feng's expression was indescribably weird. General Xiahou Jie thinks that if this is true, then the white cicada has probably become a sage. What? Lin Sun was also shocked. This was too incredible. A white cicada, about the size of a baby's palm, had become a sage? Anyone who heard this would feel that it was absurd and horrified. However, these are all rumors. No one can be sure whether they are true or false. Yan Feng continued, but what is certain is that there will be a great chance in the mulberry forest. The reason why there are so many fierce battles these days is that many powerhouses have dug out some good treasures in the mulberry forest. Mysterious ores stained with devil blood, black and white flowers growing from the same stalk, broken pieces of bronze engraved with mysterious patterns. Of course, there are also many treasures similar to the golden vein magical jade. Hearing this, Lin Sun's spirit was refreshed and his heart was burning. The reason he came to the mulberry forest this time was to look for more golden-patterned magical jade. There was a mysterious dark green leaf that contained abundant vitality hidden within it, and it could allow the broken blade to repair and transform. It was extremely miraculous. After bidding farewell to Yan Feng, Lin Sun continued his journey. Through Yan Feng's words, Lin Sun was more certain that the mulberry forest wasn't simple. It was even more amazing than the demon saint's secret land. 2 hours later, a strand of extremely dazzling blood-red light suddenly charged out from the distant horizon, and it charged into the sky and dyed the sky a strange and terrifying blood-red color. At the same time, the air here was suffused with a bone-piercing and bloody aura of slaughter, and it was dense to the point it caused one's heart to tremble. It seemed as if this was an expanse of devilish territory that contained boundless danger. Mulberry Forest. Lin Sun stopped immediately. There was a big abyss in the place where the bloody light soared into the sky, which led to the mulberry forest known as the Devil Soil stained with God's blood. Whoosh! Lin Sun took a deep breath and didn't rush to approach. Instead, he chose a place nearby, ran by and Qi to hide, and began to restore his strength silently. Although Lin Sun didn't consume much physical strength along the way, he was going to the mulberry forest this time. There were so many killings and rivers of blood there that he dared not to be careless. It wasn't until dusk fell that Lin Sun adjusted his qi to an unprecedented peak state, and his spirit was full and boiling. He had hidden a part of the high-level spiritual crystals in his luggage, and only left a part on his back. This was also to leave a way out for himself. In case of any accident, he could have a chance to replenish his supplies when he escaped from the mulberry forest. However, when Lin Sun was about to take action, he suddenly narrowed his eyes and immediately hid again. Soon, a huge golden bat flapped its wings and flew towards him from afar. On the back of the golden bat, there were several strong voodoo barbarians. Obviously, they were also going to the mulberry forest in the distance. Are you sure about the news? Is the teenager named Lin Shi really so bold that he dares to come to the mulberry forest alone? A surprised voice rang out. This made Lin Sun, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly narrow his eyes. He just came out of the Camp 7 today and arrived in this area. How could the voodoo barbarians already know the news? What surprised Lin Sun most was that he was a little familiar with this voice. After thinking about it carefully, he found it was Ing Ke, the young master of the royal family of dark barbarians. On the first day he came to the bloodthirsty battlefield, Lin Sun almost killed this guy. How could he not remember this guy's voice? Young master, the news is confirmed. It is said that Lin Shi left the Camp 7 without permission, and even Zhang Sun Lai failed to stop him in time. A respectful voice sounded. Hearing this, Lin Sun's face changed slightly even though he was always calm. He couldn't suppress the anger in his heart, and his black eyes were extremely fierce. This voice, he was also very familiar with it, because the owner of this voice was Lu Wen. It turns out that this guy didn't die, but betrayed the empire and turned to Inkei, the descendant of the royal family of dark barbarians. When Lin Sun thought of the news of Lu Wen's death, he sighed with emotion. Who would have thought that this guy was still alive and had betrayed the empire? No matter what the reason was, betrayal was unforgivable after all. Oh, it seems that you are very concerned about the news of Lin Shi. Good. If you follow my dark barbarians, I promise that you will live a more comfortable life than staying in the human empire. Inkei chuckled. Young master, you flatter me. I just do some things that I should do. Besides, I also hate Lin Shi to the core. If I can make him die in your hands, it will definitely be something worth celebrating. Lu Wen appeared to be very humble and fawning. Well, when we arrive at the mulberry forest, spread the news. Tell all the experts of the voodoo barbarian tribe that whoever can provide clues about Lin Shi will be rewarded handsomely. And if anyone can capture him alive, I can guarantee that he will be rewarded beyond imagination. Inkei's voice suddenly became decisive and murderous. While talking, the huge golden bat they rode had already gone far away. If Lin Sun's spiritual power was not strong enough, he could not catch their conversation. You betrayed the empire and wanted to kill me through the hands of the enemy. Lu Wen, I really underestimated your despicableness and shamelessness. Until they disappeared, Lin Sun came out of his hiding place, with his dark eyes deep and cold. Without delay, he rushed to the distance. The scarlet light rose to the sky and made people's heart palpitate. The place where the blood light appeared was a huge abyss, like a bloody mouth on the earth, which seemed to be able to swallow everything. Approaching here, people couldn't help but feel extremely small and insignificant. At the same time, it also made people feel extremely depressed and frightened. The atmosphere here was too terrible, boundless, bloody, and murderous as if from ancient times to the present. Lin Sun moved quickly. He carried his luggage, the broken sword, the insignificant bow and the arrow of blue sky, and walked to the depths of the abyss with ice dragon steps. Diving into it was like entering a bloody world, vast and vast. The deeper he went, the wider his vision was. On the way, Lin Sun found many traces left by battles, such as blood-stained rocks, broken corpses, and broken and destroyed treasures, which could be seen everywhere. There was no need to pay attention to them at all. There were imperial practitioners, voodoo barbarians, and alien strongmen who had all arrived here, but they died just at the edge of the mulberry forest. There were too many of them and they could be seen everywhere. They were densely packed together, and the air was still suffused with the smell of blood and gunpowder. It could be inferred from this that intense and bloody conflicts had erupted in just this area in the past few days. This made Lin Sun more vigilant. He didn't stay and continued to move forward. Before long, Lin Sun was shocked. He suddenly saw the mutilated body of an imperial practitioner lying in the distance. The residual breath showed that he was a half-step king, but now he was abandoned here with only the remains. He couldn't see immortality when he was alive, and there was no grave to bury his bones when he died. Lin Sun raised his head and looked around. The wilderness was vast and bloody. The abyss was endless, just like a blood-stained demonic world. This is cultivation. The road of cultivation is difficult. Who dares to say that this life is immortal? Lin Sun took a deep breath and continued to move forward. To his surprise, he didn't encounter any danger along the way. Before long, he met a team of imperial practitioners. They were all very surprised. After all, this was the mulberry forest, which was extremely dangerous. Those who dared to act alone were all fierce people. But Lin Sun, a young man of Tao Insight realm, walked here alone, which naturally attracted attention. After a little greeting, a practitioner told him that in order to compete for opportunities, Both the Imperial side and the Voodoo Barbarian side had rushed to the depths of the mulberry forest. Unless they encountered some kind of opportunity, no one would delay on the way, which was too wasteful. Lin Sun understood this. After saying goodbye to those practitioners, he continued to move forward. This young man, is he Lin Shu'er who has become famous recently? Some practitioners were confused. It should be him. Didn't you see him? He is carrying a white bone bow and arrows. His dress is exactly the same as the legendary young talent Lin Shu'er, who killed a half-step king with one arrow. No wonder he dares to act alone. Those practitioners were all amazed and roughly guessed Lin Sun's identity. But this is the mulberry forest after all. He came here alone. Doesn't he worry that he will be killed by the top voodoo barbarian bastards? Some practitioners were worried about Lin Sun. Chapter 723. Along the way, Lin Sun met many figures, including imperial practitioners and voodoo barbarians. Even the top figures of reincarnation developing realm almost went out in group. It was rare to meet a single person exploring here. Along the way, Lin Sun didn't stay. Whenever he noticed someone, he would avoid in advance and take a detour. He didn't want to fight. Boom. Before long, Lin Sun once again noticed that there was an enemy in front of him in advance. He was about to avoid it. Unexpectedly, a blood-red thunderbolt suddenly fell from the sky. In an instant, a group of strong voodoo barbarians thousands of meters away were instantly smashed. Their bodies disintegrated and disappeared in the blood-red thunderbolt, leaving no bones behind. That scene was so abrupt that Lin Sun couldn't help but take a breath. He looked up, only to find that the void was so vast that he couldn't find the source of the blood-red thunderbolt. This was the horror of Mulberry Forest. There were unpredictable natural disasters and anomalies. Even if you were very careful, you might encounter various accidents and eventually die suddenly. Lin Sun pursed his lips, took a deep breath, and continued to move forward. This ominous and strange danger was undoubtedly a test of courage and fighting spirit. If it were an ordinary practitioner, he would have been frightened and turned back halfway. Lin Sun continued to move forward. Before long, wisps of clouds began to appear between heaven and earth, which were as red as blood with dazzling evil spirits. This kind of blood fog was very strange. It blocked the perception of the spirit. If it wasn't prevented and resolved, it would invade the practitioner's body and corrode his spirit. Whoosh! Lin Sun pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest. After arriving here, the power of his spirit was blocked, and he could no longer perceive the danger. He could only rely on his fighting instinct to seek luck and avoid danger. However, the wonderful effect of insignificance bow was also reflected at this time. It had the power of true insight, which could see through the illusion. Sure enough, in an instant Lin Sun's vision became open, no longer blocked by the blood fog, and he could see the situation thousands of meters away. A moment later, the broken sword hanging at his waist suddenly trembled, which made Lin Sun's black eyes brighten. He calmed down and perceived. Soon, he came to a gray-brown mound, which was sparse and unremarkable. But when he arrived here, the broken sword trembled more and more violently. Lin Sun stopped, squatted down, and dug the ground directly with the broken sword. The soil flew, and soon a hole was dug in front of the mound. Ding! When Lin Sun dug 5 feet deep, the broken blade was blocked, making a sound like metal clashing. At the same time, a soft silver-white light came into Lin Sun's sight. A piece of silver pattern rare jade stone? Lin Sun felt refreshed and took it out. This thing was as big as an alms bowl. It was silver all over and glowed like water. Kacha! Kacha! Lin Sun exerted strength in his fingers and crushed it, revealing a small verdant branch in the shape of a deer's antler. It was suffused with a green glow and emitted a strong vitality that made Lin Sun feel relaxed and happy. It was a leaf the last time, and it's a branch this time. However, Both of them contain an indescribable aura of the grand Tao and vitality. Could it be that there was a divine tree that disintegrated in the past, yet its trunk and leaves didn't vanish, and they were instead sealed by these strange jades and buried beneath the ground after experiencing the passage of countless years? Mulberry forest. Mulberry forest. Perhaps, whether it's the leaves from last time or the branches this time, they all came from a mulberry tree that possesses inconceivable power. Lin Sun made a bold assumption. While thinking, he didn't hesitate to use the broken blade to absorb the vitality of this branch. In just a moment, the broken blade glowed with vitality, and the branch turned into powder. Lin Sun calmed down and perceived the broken blade. Although it was not obvious, it was a kind of improvement after all. Especially on the surface of the broken blade, the mysterious traces of Tao were looming like the moon in the water. Although they were still hazy and blurred, they had begun to become clear. Lin Sun's black eyes were bright. The power of the broken blade was terrible, and it could be called a fierce blade. If it could be further repaired and transformed, Lin Sun's combat effectiveness would undoubtedly be improved. In the following time, Lin Sun didn't rush forward. He wandered around and sensed the surroundings. As long as the broken blade trembled and buzzed, it meant that there must be some kind of treasure in the nearby area. This saved Lin Sun a lot of effort. He only needed to search according to the sensing of the broken blade, and he could get something. Several hours passed unconsciously. At this time, Lin Sun had collected 4 silver-patterned jades and 2 golden-patterned jade. There were leaves and branches hidden in them. Although they were all extremely small, they contained abundant mysterious vitality. These were all refined by the broken blade. By this time, Lin Sun had roughly inferred that if he wanted to further transform the broken blade, these were just like a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood, which couldn't satisfy him at all. However, Lin Sun was very patient. He didn't come to the mulberry forest for an unprecedented opportunity, nor did he want to participate in the treasure-snatching action that could make a king fight fiercely. Lin Sun was satisfied that the broken blade could be repaired and transformed once on this trip. Night fell. Even in the mulberry forest, it could still be clearly felt that the night was going to drown this place like a tide. Lin Sun trembled inexplicably all over, feeling a kind of unspeakable oppression, as if something terrible would happen when the night came. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling lightning cut through the void, illuminating the world. At the same time, a terrible breath rushed out from the far distance. Even though it was extremely far away, Lin Sun could still see that it was a figure bathed in divine flame, appearing in the air, looking down at the shore and fighting fiercely. King Yanqiong of the Fire Barbarian Branch. Although Lin Sun had never seen this barbarian king, he could judge it at once. It was too conspicuous. His figure seemed to be bathed in divine flame, and his breath was terrifying and matchless. Only King Yanqiong could have such spirit. However, what really moved Lin Sun was King Yanqiong's opponent. It was a broken bronze spear. The spear's shadow rotated, and there was a terrible sign of collapse in the void. With a slight sweep, the sky and the earth collapsed. It fought with King Yanqiong in the void, making the heaven and earth there seem to be torn apart, and it was dazzling. Lin Sun was about to see what was going on. Unfortunately, this battle broke out quickly and ended quickly. It was over in a few breaths. King Yanqiong seemed to be defeated and retreated angrily. Before leaving, he roared, "It's just a broken holy weapon. I will surrender to you sooner or later." It was also these words that made Lin Sun's heart tremble inexplicably. A broken holy weapon, like a peerless master, made King Yanqiong retreat. This night was not peaceful. As soon as this peerless battle ended, many terrifying breaths emerged and were distributed in different areas. Vaguely, there were roars of gods and demons, wails of ghosts and howls of wolves, echoing in the dark night, making people's scalp numb. The strongmen distributed in various areas of the mulberry forest, whether they came from the Empire or from the voodoo barbarian tribe, all stopped their actions at this moment and hid. When night fell, the bloodthirsty battlefield would be hundreds or thousands of times more terrifying than during the day, and it was even more dangerous in the mulberry forest. At this time, no one dared to act rashly. They hid in place and took the time to rest and recuperate. Seeing this, Lin Sun also hurriedly ran by Enchi, hid and began to meditate quietly. The mulberry forest at night was too terrifying. If one was not careful, he would definitely die in an instant. This night seemed to be very difficult to bear. Terrifying breaths appeared everywhere, stirring up the wind and clouds and spreading in all directions. Vaguely, the sound of gods weeping blood and ghosts howling echoed. Those who were not strong-willed might have already been frightened and possessed by the devil. Even Lin Sun had to run meditating magic to guard his mind. But even so, this night, he always felt that there were many cold thoughts sweeping over him, which scared him so much that he felt a chill down his spine. Only when dawn arrived and the veil of night gradually faded did all of this terrifying and unfathomable scene return to calm. The arrival of day caused all the experts that were distributed throughout the forest to heave a sigh of relief in their hearts. But all of them were clearly aware that many experts had probably already suffered calamity and were killed by the terrifying dangers that befell them during this night. Lin Sun also got up and started to take action. Daytime was the best time to explore the mulberry forest, and he didn't want to waste any time. However, in the next few days, he found nothing. Instead, he met many strong voodoo barbarians, many of whom were in the half-step king realm. If he hadn't sensed them with true insight in advance and avoided them in advance, a fierce battle was inevitable. Although he found nothing, after several days of exploration, Lin Sun had gradually adapted to the dangerous environment in the mulberry forest. Besides, he had preliminarily confirmed that he was close to the depths of the mulberry forest, and the strong men he met on the way were more powerful and terrible than the other. Almost all of them were at the top of the reincarnation developing realm, and old monsters in the half-step king realm were not uncommon. However, the mulberry forest was so vast that it was almost a mysterious and dangerous world of devil soil, so Lin Sun couldn't determine whether he could reach the end of the mulberry forest if he continued to explore. On this day, Lin Sun came to a barren stone forest area, where the bloody mist covered the sky and the earth, which was extremely abnormal. Just as he was about to avoid it, the broken sword suddenly trembled more intensely than before, and even let out a clear sound, showing a wave of extreme desire. Lin Sun hesitated for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth and rushed into the stone forest filled with bloody mist. In just a moment, he found something, a broken altar. Although it looked gray and broken, it gave out an ancient and boundless spirit, which was extremely extraordinary. An altar. How could there be such a thing in the mulberry forest? Lin Sun stopped and went forward to have a look. He found that the broken altar had long been blurred and repaired. It should have been covered with mysterious patterns, but they had long been worn away, and only some mottled traces could be seen. At this time, the broken sword kept trembling, and the sharp blade gave out a strong wave, as if it was extremely eager for the thing hidden in the broken altar. Lin Sun took a deep breath and went forward carefully. After making sure there was no danger, he began to dig. Crack, crack, the broken altar was easily destroyed in the excavation, and the ancient stone chips fell down. Just a moment later, Lin Sun was shocked and his heart was in turmoil. Below the altar, there was a gorgeous glow, flowing and shining, spewing out rays of divine light, like a dreamy rainbow. Shockingly, it was emitted by a pile of mysterious jade stones. There were golden patterns, silver patterns, black patterns, fire patterns, and water patterns densely packed. Fist-sized jades were piled up there, overflowing with dazzling treasure light, as if it were real. Lin Sun was so excited that he almost shouted. He had found nothing for many days, but today there were so many of them. Chapter 724. Clang. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun inserted the broken sword into the pile of glowing jades. The broken sword buzzed as if it was cheering. The blade was filled with obscure breath and began to absorb the vitality in it crazily. Lin Sun couldn't help but be delighted and expectant. He had a hunch that even if the broken sword couldn't be completely transformed this time, its power would at least be improved a lot. At the same time, Lin Sun also picked up a piece of strange jade and crushed it. Sure enough, there was a green leaf hidden in it. It was shaped like a copper coin and seemed to be carved out of jade, full of vitality. Lin Sun tried to absorb it. Suddenly, a warm and mellow vitality turned into a rolling heat flow and poured into his whole body, making every inch of his pores open and his spirit flow lively. In an instant, he seemed to become an immortal. The physical strength consumed by the previous journey also recovered at this moment, reaching an unprecedented peak state. What moved Lin Sun was that his spiritual power had been nourished and became more condensed and refined. What a mysterious life force! It has an unfathomably pure aura. Lin Sun felt it carefully. The benefits were not limited to these. Even his flesh and bones were nourished. Although it was extremely subtle, it was wonderful. Suddenly, a wisp of killing intent appeared and stabbed Lin Sun. Lin Sun's figure flashed and disappeared in place with Ice Dragon Step. Boom! A bone spear passed by and nailed to the ground in the distance, piercing a deep hole and raising dust all over the sky. If Lin Sun had been a little slower, his head would have been penetrated. Lin Sun's black eyes became cold and frightening. He had already pulled the insignificant bow in his hand and pointed it in one direction. There appeared a strong voodoo barbarian, like a shadow. It was almost impossible to be noticed in the bloody mist of the stone forest. A strong spiritual awakener of the dark barbarian. Get out of here if you don't want to die. This place is occupied by our voodoo barbarian tribe. The strong barbarian looked extremely domineering, and his eyes were firmly fixed on the place where the broken sword was inserted. There was a dense pile of strange jade stones that flowed with brilliant and resplendent colors. They were extremely eye-catching and couldn't be concealed at all. I think you are tired of living. Lin Sun shot an arrow without hesitation as he spoke. Bang! The bowstring, which was as red as blood, let out a clear cry. Around the bowed body made of white bones, there was a mysterious roar and the sound of wind and thunder. You are the awakened dark barbarian's pupils shrank as if he recognized Lin Sun. His face suddenly changed, and he screamed and dodged to one side. Puff! But he was already a step too late. The spirit arrow pierced through the left side of his chest, and he felt as if he had suffered a heavy blow. He was fiercely smashed into the ground far away, and blood sprayed everywhere. A piece of trash like you dares to fight for territory like others? Crack! Lin Sun's figure flashed, and then he stomped down and crushed the chest of the dark barbarian spiritualist. It's you, Lin. Lin, the dark barbarian spiritualist died before he could finish his words. He was originally a top figure, but it was a pity that he met Lin Sun. He deserved to be unlucky. When Lin Sun was searching for trophies, he accidentally found that there were a lot of different kinds of strange jades in this guy's bag. There were more than 10 of them. This made Lin Sun realize that he was not the only one who had discovered the secret. Other strong practitioners might have known it by now. The broken sword was still absorbing power, and its edge was enshrouded in obscure halo. According to Lin Sun's estimation, it would take at least 10 minutes to refine all the vitality in these strange jade. But soon, Lin Sun frowned. In the distant mist, there was a sound of breaking through the air, and someone was coming here. Come on, over there. Ingtong must have encountered some danger. I heard his scream. I'd like to see which human bastard dares to be so bold. In the stone forest filled with blood mist, a group of strong voodoo barbarians were full of killing intent. They were all awakened dark barbarians in groups, and there were more than 10 of them, which was shocking. Such a force could be regarded as a top force in the bloodthirsty battlefield, and they could launch a small-scale war. After all, awakened dark barbarians were rare. It was even rarer to see more than 10 dark barbarians in the bloodthirsty battlefield together. Generally, in the battles in the bloodthirsty battlefield, a powerful awakened dark barbarian could serve as a commander, and his status and power could be regarded as the top. However, similar scenes were very common in the mulberry forest. After all, this place was so horrible that even the kings of life and death realm had to be careful, not to mention the dark barbarians in the bloodthirsty battlefield. Have you heard that the young heavenly son of the empire, Lin Shu'er, has also entered the mulberry forest? Now, a group of tough and experienced voodoo barbarians are looking for him and want to kill him. Yes, the news has been spread many days ago. I also heard that Thunder Sky King has issued a decree to kill Lin Shu'er in the mulberry forest. One is to avenge Shizhen, and the other is to seize the mysterious bow in his hand. While moving forward carefully, these voodoo barbarians talk. Ho ho, this guy is really audacious. He dares to come to the mulberry forest alone. If he hid in the camp of the Empire, we might not be able to do anything to him. But now, hey, if he doesn't die, I will kill myself immediately. An earth barbarian awakened dark barbarian sneered with disdain. In this action in the mulberry forest, the voodoo barbarians had gained the upper hand, and there were 3 real kings in the barbarian camp. Under such circumstances, it would be strange if they couldn't kill Lin Shu'er. Puff. However, as soon as he finished his words, a bloody hole was pierced through his neck. Because the penetrating force was so horrible, his whole head was blown off. Suddenly, other barbarians nearby were so shocked that they became stiff and dodged subconsciously. Clatter blood sprayed out. The earth barbarian just vowed that he would kill himself if he couldn't kill Lin soon, but his neck was immediately broken, and his headless body fell to the ground. Retribution? The other barbarians were covered in cold sweat. Their faces suddenly turned livid and ugly, and they roared. Be careful, everyone! That damn Lin Shu'er must be nearby. He was killed in one blow. The rumor is true. The big bow in the little bastard's hand is too horrible. In the roar, they each took out their treasures and were extremely vigilant. Like frightened hedgehogs, they scattered. It was no wonder that they were so panicked. The rumor about Lin Sun had already spread throughout the barbarian army, and the fact that he killed Manjio, a half-step king, was even more heated. Now, all the barbarians knew that the reason why Lin Shu'er was so powerful was that he relied on the mysterious white bone bow in his hand and the black arrow obtained from the depths of the mine in Tiger Canyon. At this time, when they saw their companion die in front of them in the blink of an eye, and they didn't notice it at all, how could they not panic? It was too horrible. Such an arrow was so silent that even a spiritual awakened dark barbarian could not avoid it. Combined with the various rumors about Lin Shu'er, even a half-step king would be frightened. Shit. It's impossible to track the little bastard in the blood mist. A roar came out. Puff. But before the voice died away, the barbarian awakened dark barbarian who had just roared was shot to death on the spot. His death was even more tragic. An invisible spiritual arrow directly pierced through his mouth and pierced through his head. Another spiritual awakened dark barbarian was killed so abruptly that he didn't even notice the enemy's trace. All of a sudden, the other spiritual awakened dark barbarians felt their blood run cold. This scene was undoubtedly the most horrifying. The enemy seemed to be invisible, but he was everywhere, as if he could give them a fatal blow at any time. What was worse, in the stone forest filled with blood mist, they couldn't track the enemy at all. The scene became dead silent. No one dared to make a sound. They subconsciously thought that Lin Shu'er was using the sound to determine their location. But just a moment later, the cruel reality shattered their judgment. Another spiritual awakened dark barbarian was killed. A spiritual arrow pierced through his skull, causing blood and white brain matter to splash out. The scene was so bloody that it was almost disgusting. Run! All of a sudden, the rest of the spiritual awakened dark barbarians broke down and lost their will to fight. They couldn't even find the enemy, but the enemy seemed to be keenly aware of everything about them. How could they fight? They began to flee in panic like stray dogs. In the process, another spiritual awakened dark barbarian was killed. His buttocks were pierced through. He lay on the ground and screamed for a while before he breathed his last. Peace was restored in the area soon. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's figure to appear in the bloody mist. His dark eyes were deep. He pulled the insignificance bow and glanced around. After making sure that all the enemies had escaped without hiding, he turned around and left. But when he returned, Lin Sun had 4 more bags in his hand, which were his trophies, containing some strange items. There were all kinds of strange jade stones, as well as some blood-stained pieces of iron, broken pieces of bronze, and some other unknown things. Obviously, these were the treasures collected by the barbarians from the mulberry forest, so they must be extraordinary. Lin Sun didn't look at them carefully. After he returned, the strange jades on the ground had been completely refined by Duanren. Clang! Lin Sun pulled out Duanren. The original dark color of Duanren had now become almost transparent, and the blade was filled with misty starlight. At the same time, some clear Taoist patterns finally appeared on the surface of Duanren. Unfortunately, even if it could be seen, it was only a small part of it, so it was impossible to see its mystery. However, Lin Sun was still keenly aware that the Duanren had changed. It was as light as a feather in his hand, but its power and momentum were obviously much higher than before. Lin Sun resisted the urge to test the power of Duanren, took a deep breath, and turned away. He couldn't stay here any longer. He had to leave as soon as possible. Whoosh! Not long after Lin Sun left, one figure after another came roaring in with terrible breath. Just the invisible power emitted from them shattered all the nearby blood mist and spread around, making the scene here very clear. Chapter 725. This guy has just escaped. There is still a trace of his breath here. A middle-aged man with black and cyan skin said. His eyes were like a pair of cyan scorching suns, which could capture people's souls. His name was Mu Lingfeng, a half-step king of the Voodoo barbarian branch, ranked 47th on the king-level bounty list of the empire. His strength was even more terrible than that of Manjio, who was killed by Lin. Thunder Cloud King has ordered that this guy must be killed this time. Otherwise, he will become an inestimable horrible figure in the human empire in the future. A powerful old man with golden hair and beard and copper-like skin said in a deep voice. He was a half-step king of the gold barbarian branch, named Jin Duzhen. It's not easy to kill him. Don't forget that he has a pair of bows that can kill a half-step king. Kanglin Shui, a half-step king of the water barbarian branch, said. She was a beautiful woman with snow-white hair. She was mysterious and charming, covered by mist. Don't be nervous. According to the analysis of our king, this guy can't fully exert the power of this pair of bows with his cultivation of Tao Insight Realm. The leader of the group, Mu Lingfeng, had a calm expression as he said calmly, moreover, his strength can only support him for 1 arrow at most. This is our chance to kill him. As long as we avoid his arrow, the rest will be simple. Inkei, the young master of the dark barbarian tribe, wants to capture this guy alive. Shall we do it? Jin Duzhen frowned and asked. If there is a chance, we can. If not, we'll kill him directly. Mu Lingfeng took a deep breath, and a terrible killing intent burst out of his cyan pupils. This time, we can't let this guy escape. Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui also nodded. Lin Shire, a human practitioner who set foot on the most powerful path of cultivation as a young man, was a monster who had killed a half-step king. At the same time, he was a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos. No matter what kind of identity he had, there was enough reason for them to kill him at all costs. Otherwise, once such a monster rose, it would be an immeasurable disaster for the voodoo barbarian tribe. Let's go. Wood Spirit Peak began to move. This time, they had dispatched a total of 3 half-step kings after hearing the news. It could be said that they were fully prepared. From this, it could be seen how much importance they attached to Lin Sun. They had already treated him as their #1 enemy. If this scene were to spread to the outside world, it would probably cause a huge uproar. After all, who had ever seen 3 half-step kings attacking at the same time to deal with a mere Paradise Realm youngster? This was something that had never happened before. This is troublesome. Lin Sun frowned. He was running away, his figure flickering endlessly. This area was filled with endless blood mist, but Lin Sun knew that there was an enemy chasing after him all the way. What made Lin Sun most awe-inspiring was that he had tried to get rid of his opponent many times, but failed every time. It seems like a half-step king-level old monster has made his move. Only they would dare to chase after me without any fear. They don't have the slightest intention of concealing their strength. Lin Sun looked dignified. He could perceive this kind of pursuit, not because of how strong his perception was, but because the other side didn't hide their killing intent and hostility at all. Half-step kings. Although Lin Sun had killed Manjio, it was with the power of insignificant spiritual bow and sky arrow. After shooting that arrow, almost all the strength in his body was drained. Now he had broken through to the Tao Insight realm, and the power in his body was more than twice as strong as before. But if he really used the insignificant spiritual bow desperately, even Lin Sun himself couldn't guarantee that he could shoot the second arrow. When dusk came, Lin Sun, who had been running away, looked more and more dignified. He could perceive that the enemy behind him was getting closer and closer. Whoosh! His figure flashed, and he took a deep breath, ran Huai Qi, and hid in a rock gully thousands of meters away. The breath of this boy suddenly disappeared here. Shortly after Lin Sun hid, 3 half-step kings, Wood Spirit Peak, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui, arrived. They didn't hide their breath. The terrifying power swept out like a storm, dispelling all the blood mist nearby. Do you remember the news of the battle in Tiger Canyon last time? At that time, this boy also hid with a means of concealment. Jin Duzhen said leisurely. His eyes were like a pair of golden suns, shooting out 2 beams of light, scanning the nearby world. So, he is just repeating the same trick. If there is no accident, he should be hiding nearby. Before Jin Duzhen finished his words, he waved his sleeve, and a terrifying golden ripple spread around with his body as the center. Boom! In an instant, the void collapsed inch by inch, the earth cracked, and the cracks spread around. The rocks along the way were all crushed like paper. In an instant, the world seemed to explode, and the terrifying power made the world change color. This was the power of a half-step king. Although he was not a real king, he had 1 foot in the king's realm, beyond the spirit awakening realm. His means were extremely terrifying. How cruel! Lin Sun, who was hiding in the dark, was more aware of the power of a half-step king. If he confronted him head-on, he had absolutely no chance of winning. Whoosh! Without hesitation, Lin Sun subconsciously ran ice steps with all his strength, jumped out, and fled to the extreme distance. Haha, is that all you can do? You are just fighting like a trapped beast. With a sneer, Jin Duzhen launched an attack. Golden light flowed around his body, dazzling, and the terrifying power made the world wail. Boom! A golden bone sword flew out, emitting a dazzling light, and chopped at Lin Sun, who was far away. Boom! The 3,000-meter-long golden sword Qi was so dazzling that it seemed to split the world in half. The scene was too horrible. Lin Sun couldn't dodge at all. Since he had been locked, it was useless to dodge. At this critical moment, he pulled out the broken blade without hesitation and faced the sword Qi head-on. Clang! A deafening sound of collision resounded. Amidst the eruption of golden light, a scene that shocked everyone happened. That thick golden sword aura was actually cut in half by the broken blade. It was the power of a half-step king, which was branded with the understanding and truth of the great Tao of a king. How could it be ordinary? But now it was cut in half just like that. All of a sudden, Jean Dugen's pupils shrank, and he was a little surprised. The broken blade in his hand is mysterious. It should be an incredible treasure as well. On the other side, Mu Lingfeng said, with blazing light bursting out of his eyes. He suddenly found that if he could kill this young man, he might get a lot of great treasures. It should be so. Kanglin Shui also nodded, and her eyes flickered. She was also tempted. At the same time, Lin Sun's body was shaken back, and his qi and blood were surging. He was so upset that he almost coughed up blood. But he forced himself to hold back and kept running. The broken blade has indeed transformed. It is so sharp that it can cut the sword qi of a half-step king. I'm afraid that even the armor with spiritual tattoos can't do that. Unfortunately, these old bastards are too hard to deal with. Otherwise, I would definitely feed the broken blade with their blood. Lin Sun gritted his teeth with hatred. He tightened his body and fully activated Ice Step. His whole body was like a flash of lightning, escaping in the bloody mist. At this moment, he forgot the direction and just wanted to escape. Being chased by 3 half-step kings was really a desperate feeling. If the vast universe arc was still there, Lin Sun would not be so embarrassed. Unfortunately, the space law in the bloodthirsty battlefield was too extreme. Any treasure with the essence of Sumeru in a mustard seed could not be brought here. Run. It was the first time for Lin Sun to run the ice dragon steps with all his might. Vaguely, there seemed to be shadows of ice dragons flashing in the void around him, taking him to travel in the void and shuttling forward, which was mysterious and amazing. This allowed his speed to increase by a large margin compared to before. Even Mu Lingfeng and others who were chasing behind him were a little surprised. Lin Sun's speed was even faster than that of the top figures of the Dark Barbarian clan. They also didn't hold back and chased more and more fiercely. If Lin Sun escaped this time, they would be really disgraced. Crack! Crack! In Lin Sun's palm, the strange jade stones burst into pieces, and the abundant vitality contained in them was absorbed by Lin Sun without hesitation. Compared with high-grade spiritual crystals, these strange jade stones containing mysterious vitality had an extremely incredible effect on replenishing physical strength. Sure enough, in just a moment, Lin Sun's consumed physical strength was restored, and he reached an unprecedented peak state. Moreover, as he continued to absorb the mysterious vitality, this state continued all the time, even making Lin Sun feel full. Little guy, this is the mulberry forest. The deeper you go, the more horrible it is. If you wander around, I'm afraid you may be killed before we catch up with you. Why don't you stay here and have a good talk with us? Maybe, if you cooperate well, we will leave you a whole body so that you won't die too miserably. Behind him came the calm and indifferent voice of Mu Lingfeng. Leave your mother's body intact. Lin Sun in front of him suddenly turned around, and the insignificant spiritual bow in his hand was fully drawn. At this moment, a pitch-black sky arrow suddenly burst out. Boom! The void burst into pieces, and a wisp of the great Tao resounded between heaven and earth, which was magnificent and sacred. Strange scenes appeared one after another, including the explosion of stars and the collapse of all things. There were also horrible scenes of suns sinking and golden crows crying blood. As the sky arrow was shot out, the earth and void along the way were instantly destroyed, turning into violent turbulence, sweeping and crushing all the way. Heaven and earth trembled at this moment. Mu Lingfeng's eyes almost popped out, and he couldn't calm down. How could he expect that Lin Sun, who was running away, would react so fiercely? Just a few words stimulated him to shoot the arrow desperately. Howl! Mu Lingfeng let out a scream like a frightened old rabbit and quickly dodged to one side. Chapter 726. Puff. Although he had tried his best to dodge, Wood Lingfeng had been seriously injured. His ribs were pierced by the sky arrow, leaving a bloody hole. Heavenly sounds too, the terrible destructive power almost tore his body apart. He couldn't help but let out a shrill scream, shaking the 9 heavens. This was the power of the sky arrow. The only pity was that Wood Lingfeng had been prepared this time, so he was lucky not to follow in the footsteps of Manjiu. Hiss! Jean Duzhen on one side gasped, and his expression changed slightly. This kind of arrow made him tremble. It was too terrible and unbelievable. Tut! Kanglin Shui was waiting for an opportunity at this moment. Her figure flashed, and she took out an animal bone bowl. It was full of water light, pouring down like a great river. The animal bone bowl was holy and full of water light. This was a secret treasure called Overturned Water Bowl, which could store treasures. Wallet in the blink of an eye, the blue sky arrow was enveloped by the rippling light of the water. Collect! She let out a clear rebuke, and a hint of joy appeared on her face. But in the next moment, her face suddenly changed and she screamed. An enormous bang resounded as the sky arrow of sky emanated its invisible divine might and suddenly struggled free of its restraints. The dark red tip of the arrow flashed, and it pierced through the overturned bowl with a bang. Hula! The fragments of the overturned water bowl fluttered, making Kanglin Shui scream in pain. This was a treasure in her hand. Who would have thought that it would be destroyed so easily? This was really called going for wool and coming home shorn. The sky arrow had already returned to Lin Sun's hand. This was not because of Lin Sun's strength, but because there was a resonance between the sky arrow and the insignificant longbow. Whoosh! At this time, Lin Sun continued to escape. In the rear, Wood Lingfeng, Kanglin Shui, and Jean Duzhen looked extremely bad. They were livid and gloomy, and they were almost crazy with anger. The arrow just now made them look very embarrassed. What made them lose face most was that they, 3 half-step kings, couldn't stop Lin Sun in such a situation. Chase! Wood Lingfeng roared like an injured and angry ancient beast. I'm going to kill this boy and eat his flesh and blood. Kanglin Shui screamed. He has already shot 1 arrow, so he is destined to not have the ability to shoot a second arrow. His time of death has come. Jean Duzhen's eyes were filled with killing intent. Boom! Escape lights tore through the skies. Their killing intent surged, not hiding anything as they continued to chase after him. Gotcha! Gotcha! One stone after another exploded in Lin Sun's hand, and the mysterious vitality in them poured into Lin Sun's body, replenishing his physical strength. After shooting the blue sky arrow just now, he still had a portion of his strength left and hadn't used up all of it. The reason was that he was now in the heavenly passage realm, which was completely different from when he killed Manjiu. Even so, it was impossible for Lin Sun to shoot the second arrow with the remaining power. However, with the help of the Jade Stone, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about the recovery of his strength. Just now, what a terrifying power! Isn't that Lin Shire, the spiritual tattooist grandmaster in the No. 7 camp of the Empire? Not long after Lin Sun and Mu Lingfeng left, a group of imperial practitioners appeared in this area. They had noticed the shocking movement here from a distance, and even saw the horrible vision when Lin Sun shot the arrow. It must be him. Didn't you hear that Mu Lingfeng, the half-step king of the wood barbarians, was seriously injured? His scream shook the world. The expressions of these cultivators changed, and they were all extremely shocked. God, Lin Shire was chased by 3 half-step kings. It seems that the news is true. The voodoo barbarian bastard is determined to kill Lin Shire this time. Come on, spread the news and let all the practitioners in other areas of the mulberry forest know that Lin Shire is a talented young man who can't be killed by the voodoo barbarian bastard. After the initial shock, these practitioners all moved on their own. As imperial practitioners, they didn't have to choose at all. They would choose to stand on Lin Sun's side. Now that they saw that he was killed, who could remain indifferent? On this day, A big news spread in all the major areas of the mulberry forest. Lin Sun, who was known as a talented young man, was chased by 3 half-step kings of the voodoo barbarians and was in a precarious situation. Suddenly, a great uproar was caused. "Haha, the young devil is finally going to die. I knew he would be killed this time. Does he really think he can be invincible with a mysterious big bow? Ridiculous! How dare he? Now he is finally going to be wiped out. This is the result of offending the voodoo barbarian tribe. No matter how talented you are and how powerful your treasures are, you are doomed to be strangled." Many voodoo barbarians were excited and kept talking about it. The rumors about Lin Sun had already shocked and scared them. After all, it was too shocking that a young man in the Tao Insight realm could kill a half-step king. Now, knowing that Lin Sun was about to be killed, these voodoo barbarians secretly breathed a sigh of relief and gloated. This news also caused a great disturbance among the practitioners of the empire. Lin Sun was not only famous in the voodoo barbarian tribe, but also in the 8 camps of the empire. It was hard not to attract attention when knowing that he was in danger. Oh no! Is Lin Shire really unable to escape this time? The situation is very bad. Being chased by 3 half-step kings, even a real half-step king would be in trouble, let alone a young man in the Tao Insight realm. Many practitioners of the empire were worried. What are you afraid of? Don't forget that Lin Shire killed a half-step king with 1 arrow in the last battle of Tiger Canyon. Since he dares to come to the mulberry forest alone, he must be well prepared. It is impossible for him to be killed so easily. Alas, anyway, hurry to find Lin Shire's whereabouts. We can't watch him being killed by voodoo barbarians. When hearing the news, Inke, the young master of the dark barbarian tribe, immediately said, "Lin Shire is doomed to die this time. You humans don't even have a chance to collect his body, let alone rescue him. Even if you send out your kings, it will be of no help." When these words came out, many practitioners of the empire became gloomy and realized that the situation was not good. Even some top bigwigs temporarily stopped looking for opportunities and began to pay attention to this matter. I believe that Lin Shire will be safe. At the same time, I will pay attention to this battle. If Lin Shire is killed, I will kill all the voodoo barbarians in the mulberry forest. Before long, General Xiahou Jie's murderous voice made the practitioners of the empire boil. "Haha, Xiahou Jie, your time of death is coming. How dare you talk nonsense here? Wash your neck and wait for me. I'm going to take your head off very soon." Soon, Flame King on the side of voodoo barbarians made a cold and disdainful threat, which also caused a great sensation. For a moment, the atmosphere in the mulberry forest changed. When all kinds of rumors were spreading, Lin Sun had been running away. Buzz. Before long, the insignificant longbow was fully drawn, and the sky arrow was ready. However, before Lin Sun shot out the arrow, the 3 half-step kings, including Wood Lingfeng, who had been chasing behind him, had been vigilant and avoided the arrow. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He had to put away the insignificant longbow and continue to escape. This scene had happened many times. Since Wood Lingfeng was hurt, the 3 half-step kings had been on alert all the way, leaving no chance for Lin Sun to shoot the sky arrow. This made Lin Sun feel a little gloomy. There were few rare jade stones left in his hand. Although they had not caught up with him all the way, the constant consumption of physical strength would become a fatal problem. Fortunately, the night is coming. Lin Sun took a deep breath. While escaping, he could clearly perceive that the sky was getting dark. Damn little bastard! Why is he so fast? In the rear, Wood Lingfeng and the other half-step kings were more depressed than Lin Sun. They chased all the way but failed to catch up with Lin Sun, which made them almost cough up blood. They were half-step kings. Now, they couldn't even catch up with a young man in Tao Insight realm, which was a great shame. If this news spread out, they would be ashamed to raise their heads. No. The night is coming. Suddenly, Kanglin Shue's beautiful face changed unpredictably. All of a sudden, Wood Ling Feng and Jin Duzhen's faces became gloomy. When the night came, the bloodthirsty battlefield would become 100 times more horrible than during the day, especially in the mysterious and dangerous mulberry woods. Even half-step kings like them could only lie low when the night came, and dared not to rush in recklessly. The night came quickly. The world was shrouded in an oppressive and frightening atmosphere, which made people's hair stand on end. It's okay. If he doesn't want to die in an accident, he won't dare to continue. Let's stop. I've locked on to his breath. Even if he hides, it's useless. Finally, Wood Ling Feng made the decision. The night made him feel uneasy all over, and he felt a kind of potential danger. That's the only way. Kanglin Shui and Jin Duzhen were reluctant, but they had to agree for safety. However, to their surprise, Lin Sun in front of them had no intention of stopping at all. In the vast night, he disappeared in a flash. This. Wood Ling Feng was dumbfounded. Does this little bastard want to die? Obviously. He realized that the arrival of night would be his only chance to avoid our pursuit. Kanglin Shui gnashed her teeth. What should we do? Should we chase him or not? Jin Duzhen hesitated, thinking about the pros and cons. Old bastards, why don't you chase him? Come and fight me if you dare. At this moment, Lin Sun's roar suddenly sounded in the distant night. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when the Jadefall arrow carried a terrifying and monstrous might as it rumbled and crushed through space as it shot over explosively. At this moment, Wood Ling Feng and Kanglin Shui were so angry that they almost jumped up. How dare this bastard provoke and fight back when he was at the end of the road? Chapter 727. Although they were enraged, the Wood Spirit Peak disciples were still frightened by the blue sky arrow, causing them to use all their strength to evade. Heaven's small boom. Small near them, a bottomless pit had been dug open in the ground. Shattered rocks shot out and dust filled the air, causing their faces to be covered in dirt. Damn it! Wood Spirit Peak was so angry that their lungs almost exploded. They were the dignified half-step king tiers. When had they ever been so embarrassed? Old bastards, if you're not afraid of death, catch up. Lin Sun's provocative voice sounded in the distance. This almost drove Wood Spirit Peak crazy. Did he really think they wouldn't dare to kill him? Should we go after him? Jin Duzhen's face was livid, and his eyes were steaming with terrible anger. This, Wood Spirit Peak was a little hesitant. Under the cover of the night, they had come to the depths of the mulberry forest. Everything seemed unknown and dangerous. This guy is so provocative. If we don't take this opportunity to kill him, how can we face our clansmen? Song Lan Shui was also trembling with anger. Not only did she fail to catch up with Lin Sun, but she also destroyed her treasure, the bowl of overturned water. Now, she was provoked by Lin Sun again and again. How could she tolerate this? Suddenly, Wood Spirit Peak's face changed slightly. Oh no, there's a terrifying aura in the distance. It's approaching us. Almost at the same time, Jin Duzhen and Song Lan Shui also noticed that the aura was not concealed. It soared into the sky in the night. It was terrifying and eerie, with a murderous aura. Obviously, Lin Sun's arrow was too loud and attracted the attention of a terrifying existence. The purpose of this brat's arrow just now, could it be that he wants to borrow a knife to kill someone? Wood Spirit Peak and the others had the same thought at the same time. Go after him. Staying here is bound to be dangerous. It's better to go all out and kill that damn bastard. Wood Spirit Peak gritted his teeth and made a decision. Swish. 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 Their figures flashed and continued to chase in the night. Although they were furious, they became extremely vigilant and careful. It couldn't be helped, the mulberry forest at night was too terrifying. Not long after they left, a blood-colored moth flapped its wings and floated over the area. Its entire body seemed as if it was carved from the purest blood-colored jade, and it was only the size of a palm. It was scarlet red and beautiful, and it was coiled with a bloody glow. Its bearing was light and agile, but when it flapped its wings, the nearby space would imperceptibly collapse and sink as if it was swallowed by a black hole. The terrifying baleful aura that soared into the heavens came from his body. Although its figure was small, its aura was not simple at all. It floated there like a ruler of the world, looking down on everything in the world. "Bai Luo," it murmured softly, so it wasn't destroyed. "It's a pity that its aura is too weak. Back then, it could even kill. Looks like it should have suffered some sort of heavy injury, or perhaps its power has already been worn away by the passage of time." Finally, after a moment of silence, it flapped its wings and chased after Lin Sun and the others. Lin Sun, who was running away, felt an inexplicable uneasiness in his heart. He stopped immediately and found that he had broken into a strange area. It was too quiet here. The bloody mist was steaming, and the night was shrouded in darkness. It was so quiet that there was not even a trace of wind. In other areas, all kinds of earth-shaking roars came from afar, like the roars of gods and demons, and also like the roars of fierce beasts, which made people's scalp numb. But only in this area, there was no sound at all, which seemed very abnormal. Lin Sun suddenly became unprecedentedly vigilant. His scalp was a little numb, and he realized that there must be some unknown great horror hidden in this area. When Lin Sun was hesitating whether to continue moving forward, he faintly heard a sound of breaking through the air in the area behind him. "These old beasts have really caught up with us?" Lin Sun was a little surprised. His previous provocation was originally a kind of test to see whether those half-step kings really dared to continue to act in the night. Unexpectedly, they really caught up with him. "Then let's have a fight to see which of us has a tougher life." Lin Sun gritted his teeth and rushed to the deeper part of this strange area, regardless of anything else. He already had a plan in mind, and he was ready to go all out. If he really encountered a great danger, the worst result was nothing more than a mutual destruction, and everyone would be killed. At least it was better than dying in the hands of the enemy, and letting the enemy leave alive. Swish! Lin Sun moved extremely fast in the bloody mist. However, the uneasiness in his heart was getting stronger and stronger, and he was even a little frightened and cold. In this strange and silent area, there seemed to be a pair of invisible eyes watching him all the time, which made Lin Sun's heart show a sign of collapse. This was an unprecedented horror, more terrifying than facing a life-death realm king. But Lin Sun had no time to care about this. What? Suddenly, in Lin Sun's vision, there was a touch of ice and snow crystal light, which was flashing in the bloody mist in the distance, with an indescribable sense of sacredness. "This is?" Lin Sun approached carefully, and immediately saw an unforgettable picture. In the bloody mist, a big tree, which seemed to be carved out of ice and snow, stood there. Its leaves were like cattail leaf fans, glittering like ice and snow, luxuriant and vigorous, with holy light falling down. The stem of the big tree was even more amazing. Its old skin was cracked like dragon scales, and it was also crystal clear, reaching straight to the sky. Its height was immeasurable. A big tree, sacred and brilliant, as pure as ice and snow, stood there, with a kind of majestic and solemn atmosphere that made people want to worship it. Thousands of snow-white divine light fell from its branches, like a waterfall of light rain, flowing and dancing, which was particularly eye-catching and shocking in the night filled with bloody mist. Lin Sun was stunned. He felt a kind of incomparable sacred vitality spreading from the ancient ice and snow tree. Under the influence of the vast and mighty breath, Lin Sun's chi-ji also boiled and became unprecedentedly lively. At that moment, Lin Sun had a feeling of enlightenment and ascension. This, Lin Sun was shocked. Could it be a legendary holy tree? But at the same time, Lin Sun felt more and more uneasy. His hair stood on end, and the fatal breath of danger was beating every inch of his skin like a tide, making him almost want to leave this place. The strangeness and silence of this place are related to this tree. Lin soon made a judgment. He thought for a moment, and finally, he gritted his teeth and approached step by step. When he was only 30 meters away from the holy ice tree, he almost couldn't bear the terrible breath. In the end, he utilized the Bai and Qi to conceal himself. Even though this place was extremely dangerous, it was also capable of deterring the Wood Spirit Peak's members. Lin Sun wanted to see if they dared to fight here. Something's wrong. There's a great danger here. Soon, the figures of Wood Spiritual Peak and the others appeared in the vicinity of this strange area. In an instant, their faces changed. As a half-step king, they could sense more danger, and realized that there was a danger in this area that could threaten their lives. Should we go after them? Jean Duzhen swallowed his saliva with difficulty, feeling a little cold. There was a breath in this area that made him feel suffocated. If this guy dares to go in, why can't we? Moreover, from the breath he left behind, he obviously hasn't been killed. We've already chased him here. If we go back now, wouldn't it be too embarrassing? Kanglin Shui said, gritting her teeth. Although she said that, she was actually a little uneasy. Then, go after them. Would Spiritual Peak gritted his teeth. But if there's a trace of something wrong, we'll leave immediately. We can't hesitate. Jean Duzhen and Kanglin Shui nodded. This was undoubtedly the safest way. Not long after they advanced in fear, the Wood Spirit Peaks group also discovered the snow-white sacred tree. Their eyes immediately widened as they stood there in shock. The breath of the divine path. This ancient tree has the breath of the divine path. Could it be that the rumors are true? Wood Spiritual Peak and the others were so excited that they almost shouted. Legend has it that in the original mulberry forest, there was a great secret to becoming a sage. A mulberry tree obtained this secret by chance and finally became a sage, commanding the heavens. Jean Duzhen murmured, his expression full of desire. Originally, I thought the rumors were exaggerated, but now it seems that they are all true. Look, there's an ice flower at the top of the holy tree, and on the flower bud there's a fruit. It's so bright, like an icy sun. Kanglin Shui realized something and exclaimed in excitement, That can't be a sage fruit, right? Wood Spiritual Peak and Jean Duzhen looked over, and indeed, on the top of the holy tree, there was an ice flower the size of a millstone. The petals were crystal clear, and they were in full bloom, emitting a myriad of divine lights. And on top of the ice flower there was a fruit. Although it was only the size of a fist, it was so bright that one couldn't look at it directly, like a small icy sun, extremely dazzling. This is the great creation that our king is looking for. I didn't expect that under a strange combination of circumstances, we found it first. Wood Spiritual Peak took a deep breath and said. At this moment, he even forgot to chase after Lin Sun. The opportunity in front of him was so amazing and tempting that his mind was firmly attracted. You protect me. I'm willing to take a risk for this opportunity. Finally, Wood Spiritual Peak gritted his teeth and decided to pick the mysterious fruit hanging on the top of the holy tree. Okay. Jean Duzhen and Kanglin Shui also decided to fight. Even if they felt great uneasiness and danger at the moment, they would not hesitate to risk it for this opportunity. Wealth was sought in danger, not to mention such an unparalleled opportunity. It was enough for them to fight for it at all costs. At this time, Lin Sun, who was hiding not far away, was speechless. He was the first to come here, but because of shock and vigilance, he didn't find that there was such a great opportunity hidden on the top of the holy tree. What should he do? Should he just watch this great opportunity being taken away by them? Lin Sun was a little unwilling, but soon he calmed down. If it was so easy to get such an opportunity, it would have been taken away long ago. How could it survive until now? There must be a mystery in it. Could it be that Wood Spirit Peak and the others couldn't see this? Obviously not. Chapter 728. Boom. Wood Spirit Feng began to move. At this moment, he was extremely careful and calm. He circulated his strength to the limit and even took out his trump card. Heavenly sound novel. There was a beast bone necklace, a mysterious inner armor, a cloak with totem barbarian markings, and an ancient green spear in his hand. He seemed to be armed to the teeth. His entire body shone with dazzling light. Even Lin Sun, who was in the dark, was stunned. Only now did he realize that a half-step king's foundation was indeed extraordinary. At the same time, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui were also on guard. They took out their secret treasures and guarded Wood Spirit Feng. Everything was ready. Wood Spirit Feng suddenly raised his head. His eyes instantly locked onto the peak of the holy tree. Then, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. Rumble, his aura skyrocketed and climbed to the peak in an instant. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. He was very clear that if he were to face this old guy head-on, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand a single move. Swoosh! He stepped on the void and ascended. His speed was not fast, and he seemed very vigilant and careful. Soon, he was close to the peak of the holy tree. At this moment, even Wood Spirit Feng felt his mouth go dry and his heart beat violently. If he could seize this unparalleled opportunity, then would he be able to step into the true king realm? Calm down. Calm down. At this moment, Wood Spirit Feng displayed the calmness of a half-step king. He was completely alert and careful. Close. He could even clearly see that mysterious picture scrolls appeared around the crystal fruit. There was an ancient and boundless sound of the Tao drifting in the air. It was sacred and boundless. A rain of light swirled around. A clear and holy fragrance that seeped into the depths of his bones drifted in the air. It made Wood Spirit Feng feel so comfortable that his soul almost left his body. Wood Spirit Feng finally couldn't bear it anymore. He moved as fast as lightning and grabbed towards the fruit. But almost at the same time, a cicada's cry suddenly rang out. It was faint like the strings of a zither. It was indescribably clear and ethereal. But when it fell into Wood Spirit Feng's ears, his soul was instantly imprisoned. His blood froze and a terrifying tearing force spread out from his body. This! Wood Lingfeng's pupils dilated, and within his field of vision, he saw a snow-white cicada. It was only the size of an infant's palm, and it was quietly lying on the snow flower below the fruit. Its eyes were cold and indifferent, and carried a trace of deep disdain. It was as if a god in the sky was looking down on ants on the ground. White cicada, it's. Wood Spirit Peak's face instantly turned deathly pale as he recalled a widely circulated legend in the mulberry forest. There was once a practitioner who swore that he saw a white cicada in the depths of the mulberry forest. The cicada was as big as a baby's palm, and its body was surrounded by the light of ascension. With a soft chirp, it destroyed everything within 100 miles. The Empire's General Xiahou Jie deduced that if the rumors were true, then it was highly likely that this white cicada had already stepped into the divine path. As soon as he thought of this, the Wood Spirit Peak indeed appeared. The white cicada's body was surrounded by a dense and dreamlike rain of light, like the glow of an ascended immortal. Then, he completely lost consciousness and consciousness. Below the holy tree, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui, who had been constantly on guard, couldn't help but clench their fists tightly when they saw Wood Spirit Peak approaching the holy fruit. Their hearts were filled with excitement and anticipation. However, they quickly noticed that something was wrong. Wood Spirit Peak had clearly made his move, but his movements were stiff as if he was imprisoned. He maintained an extremely strange posture and didn't move at all. Could it be that he's met with misfortune? Both of them were shocked, but what puzzled them was that from the beginning until the end, they didn't sense any killing intent or danger approaching. Pooh! 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 Then, their pupils suddenly dilated. In their field of vision, the motionless Wood Spirit Peak's body suddenly collapsed soundlessly, transforming into countless pieces of flesh and blood that rained down. From the beginning until the end, not a single sound was made. There wasn't even a shrill cry or a sound of begging for mercy. Silently, a half-step king had exploded into pieces of flesh and blood. Jean Duzhen and Kanglin Shui were so shocked that their souls almost left their bodies. They felt as if they had fallen into an icy pit, and they almost cried out involuntarily. How could this be? This scene was too strange and terrifying, causing the two of them to instinctively choose to flee at the first possible moment. At this moment, even if the secret of immortality was right in front of them, they would never look back, not to mention the unparalleled opportunity. It was too terrible. At this time, Lin Sun also had a layer of goosebumps all over his body, and his heart was in turmoil. He had already seen the power of Wood Spirit Peak, but now, he had died soundlessly. This was a half-step king, who had long stood among the top powerhouses in the world. How could he just die like this? This made Lin Sun have an impulse to turn around and run away. This ice-holy tree was tempting, but the killing intent hidden in it was also boundlessly horrifying. Then, a scene that made Lin Sun's heart even more chilled appeared. Not far away, Jean Duzhen and Kanglin Shui, who were fleeing, actually collapsed inch by inch in the process of escaping, turning into flesh and blood that rained down along the way. Lin Sun was so shocked that he couldn't speak. This was the first time he had seen such a way of death. It was too horrifying. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know who did it. Originally, Lin Sun should have been glad and happy to see Wood Spirit Peak and the others die together. But at this moment, he couldn't feel happy at all. At present, he was hiding beside the ice-holy tree. Although he had concealed his breath with miasma chi, he knew clearly that from the moment he appeared here, he had already been targeted. Clatter suddenly, a strange phenomenon sounded in the distant area, which seemed very harsh in this deathly silent atmosphere. A blood-colored moth suddenly appeared. Its tiny body seemed to be carved out of the most perfect blood jade in the world. It was bright red and sacred. It was light and agile, and when it flapped its wings, the void silently collapsed and sank like a black hole. Its breath soared to the sky, like a ruler descending to the world. It made Lin Sun's eyes sting and his heart trembled. His face changed dramatically again. This breath was even more terrible than that of a life-death realm king. Lin Sun suddenly thought of the old ape who had stepped into the divine path in the demon saint's secret realm. There was no doubt that this blood-red moth was also a terrible existence at the same level. Whoosh! However, before he could react, Lin Sun noticed that an indifferent and cold gaze fell on him. At that moment, it was like a sharp knife to his throat. But soon, this gaze disappeared. Then, Lin Sun, who had been in a cold sweat, saw a white cicada in his field of vision. It flew from the top of the holy tree. Its body was as holy as ice and snow, sprinkling a rain of light like a dream. In a flash, it had come to the void in the distance. Immediately, the cicada's cry sounded, faint like the sound of a zither, ethereal and clear, stirring the 9 heavens and 10 earths. A holy aura suddenly appeared on the white cicada's body. It shot into the sky, causing the space in the area to rumble and violently ripple. "You've crossed the boundary," the white cicada said in a cold voice. "The catastrophe of the Tao hasn't come yet, and you want to take action? I learned the Tao in ancient times and awakened in the present. I can't remember many things, but I can't forget some things about my old friend." In the distance, the blood-red moth fluttered, shining brightly. In terms of momentum, it was not weaker than the white cicada. These were two terrifying divine creatures. Lin Sun took a deep breath and roughly guessed that perhaps it was because of the appearance of the blood-colored moth that the white cicada had no time to deal with him, so he was lucky to escape. Otherwise, he would probably suffer the exact same fate as those 3 from the Wood Spirit Peak. No matter what, crossing the boundary is a form of provocation. The white cicada's voice was ice-cold, and it had a unique rhythm to it. It was like the sound of the Tao was reverberating, and the world was filled with a divine and boundless aura. "Oh, in that case, why don't we fight?" The blood-colored moth seemed to be too lazy to explain. Its voice was light, and it seemed to be free and conceited. "As you wish." Boom! The white cicada rushed up and suddenly arrived above the ninth heaven. At the same time, the blood-red mothet flapped its wings and charged into the sky like a scarlet storm. "You dare to stop me from killing this kid?" Suddenly, the white cicada's voice became even colder, as if it had been infuriated. Lin Sun was stunned, and then he realized that the white cicada was about to kill him just now, but for some reason, it was blocked by the bloody moth. "What's wrong? Are you exasperated?" The bloody moth let out a faint laugh. Boom! Above the sky, the battle broke out. The divine saber light seemed to explode the night sky, and the sky was full of shocking and terrible scenes. At this moment, the strong practitioners in various areas of the mulberry forest, whether they were imperial practitioners or voodoo barbarians, no matter their cultivation level, all felt fear at the same time. They all looked up at the night sky. There were two sacred and boundless auras colliding. They were bright and blazing, illuminating the sky and tearing the night sky apart. Vaguely, there were visions of the Great Way collapsing and the gods and demons weeping blood. Saint Confrontation, General Xiahou Xiexian, Voodoo Barbarian Yen Qiong King, Thunder Heaven King, and Gold Pearl King were all frightened. Saint Tao. How many years had it been since such a level of power appeared in the world? Now, it reappeared in the mulberry forest, which was too amazing. If it was spread out, it was bound to cause a shock in the world. In front of the ice and snow tree, Lin Sun narrowly escaped death. His clothes were soaked in cold sweat, and he still had a lingering fear. Tonight was too dangerous. It was like walking through the gate of hell. Run! Without any hesitation, Lin Sun wanted to leave immediately. If he didn't take this opportunity to escape, he would really be in trouble if the white cicada returned. As for the fruit on the ice-snow holy tree, Lin Sun didn't dare to covet it at all. He was even sure that if he dared to approach it rashly, the white cicada in the middle of battle would absolutely kill him at all costs. "Friend, since you are here, why leave? The battle is about to start, and it's impossible to tell the outcome in a short time. I just woke up from the endless silence, and you came here to take refuge by accident. It can be said that we are destined to meet. Why don't we take this opportunity to have a chat?" But just as Lin Sun was about to leave, a clear and gentle voice came from the ice and snow tree, inviting Lin Sun with kindness. Chapter 729. Lin Sun felt strange and his hair stood on end. God! Novel. It was incredible that a guy with unknown origin sitting on the mysterious holy tree invited Lin Sun and said he was destined to meet him. Alas, the years are long and lonely. It's not easy to meet you. Why do you want to leave? I just want to have a chat with you. The clear and gentle voice sighed with emotion. Then, Lin Sun was horrified to find that an invisible force enveloped him and took him to the holy tree in an instant. An ice flower bloomed, and thousands of divine lights fell like a dream. Lin Sun helplessly watched himself sitting on the crystal-clear trunk beside the ice flower. From beginning to end, he couldn't control or resist. "My friend, you are forcing me. How can this be called fate?" Lin Sun swallowed hard. His scalp was numb. The only thing he felt lucky was that he didn't sense any danger at the moment. In fact, sitting on the holy tree, his body was bathed in strands of holy, icy light, making him feel lazy and comfortable. Fate is like an illusion, it's empty. It's fine to just follow one's heart's desires. If one is blindly obsessed, then one will instead fall into a disadvantageous position and clash with my Tao. When the clear and gentle voice sounded, Lin Sun saw a futon made of ice jade and a blooming ice flower next to him. A golden cicada was lying on it in a serene and calm manner. The golden cicada was only the size of a baby's palm. Its whole body was glowing with soft golden light. Its eyes were clear and translucent, as if they could reflect the secrets of people's hearts. It was very holy and radiated a light of wisdom. It was just a cicada, but it gave Lin Sun a sense of solemnity and freedom. All of a sudden, Lin Sun's eyes widened. He never expected that there was a golden cicada on the holy tree besides a white cicada. Could it be, was this also a horrible creature that had stepped into the divine Tao? Lin Sun's heart trembled. Is the divine Tao terrible? I don't think so. It's just a door on the road of Tao. You can't see through the mystery outside the door, so you are afraid. When you push the door open one day, you will find that it's just SOSO. Suddenly, the golden cicada spoke again, as if it had seen through Lin Sun's thoughts. Its voice had a calming power. Just SOSO? Lin Sun had a ridiculous feeling. Since ancient times, countless practitioners had no chance to set foot in the divine path, and could only look up to it. However, when it came from the mouth of the golden cicada, it seemed to be very casual and ordinary. Yes, that's all. Golden cicada said, I've had a vision since a long time ago. One day, all living beings in this world will be able to become saints, and all of them will be free from the suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Lin Sun was shocked. How arrogant this guy was. All living things can become saints? Since ancient times, who would dare to lie like this? Did I scare you? It doesn't matter. Whether I believe it or not is ultimately my business. Golden cicada appeared very gentle. Lin Sun calmed down a little and asked, Really just a chat? Yes, chatting. Golden cicada said, Do you know that before the primordial age, when the living beings of the world began to awaken their roots of wisdom and first came to know the world, what were they doing? Do what? Lin Sun couldn't help but ask. He had never thought of such a question before. Chatting. Golden cicada gave an answer that almost made Lin Sun speechless. But soon, Golden cicada gave an elaboration and explanation. Chatting is naturally about the heaven. At that time, the world was like the beginning of chaos, and everything showed an ancient and primitive appearance. The existence of the heaven was like the incarnation of the Great Way, high and untouchable, far and unreachable. If you want to embark on the road of cultivation, you must understand and explore it. At that time, the first thing practitioners did when they got together was to chat, talk about their knowledge and perception of the heaven, and exchange their experiences with each other. So, after a long time, the road of cultivation was explored step by step. It turns out to be this kind of chat. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Hearing the description of chat, he felt refreshed. When you set foot on the divine path, you should learn to chat. Golden cicada suddenly said, But at that time, the object of your chat is all living beings, imparting knowledge or educating. It's all about the divine path you pursue. Is it so particular to become a divine path? Lin Sun was surprised and unconsciously attracted. Even the life-death realm couldn't see through the mystery of the divine path, because this realm was too lofty. It was said that one could live as long as the ages and shine as the sun and the moon. It was extremely incredible. Now, it was undoubtedly a rare learning opportunity for Lin Sun to learn something about the divine path from the mouth of this mysterious golden cicada. It's not difficult to become a divine path, but it's not easy either. There are great mysteries hidden in it. You only need to know that there are many so-called saints in the world, but they are just superficial. They still follow the old path of the past, and their achievements are doomed to be limited. At best, they are pseudo-saints. A true saint must carve out an unprecedented path of the Tao on his own. Golden cicada's words made Lin Sun shudder. Was there a difference between true and false Tao in the divine path? The saint without saint is the true saint, and the Tao without Tao is the great way. It's better to forget about things and myself. Golden cicada suddenly murmured as if it remembered something. Lin Sun was also stunned. The divine path was too far away for him. Even though he had heard some secrets about the divine path, it didn't affect him much. At the moment, Lin Sun just thought that today's chat was really special, even absurd and bizarre. In the vast and dangerous mulberry forest, blood mist pervaded the air. In the sky, two horrible creatures who had stepped into the divine path were fighting fiercely. It was earth-shattering. On the ground, he was sitting on the top of the ice and snow holy tree, chatting with a golden cicada lying on an ice cushion. The atmosphere was really weird. By the way, there was also the holy fruit close at hand. Lin Sun suddenly realized that the holy fruit, which was as bright as the ice and snow sun, was not far from his head. It was only the size of a fist, as if it was carved out of white ice and snow. It was filled with bright and unparalleled holy light, and thousands of dreamy divine lights fell from it. The fragrance was clear and cold, and it seemed to be able to penetrate into the depths of the soul, making people feel as if they were walking on clouds. Numerous mysterious phenomena were faintly flickering in the surroundings of the fruit, and they were faintly visible while strands of the tune of the Tao that seemed like the sound of nature reverberated through the surroundings. In a trance, Lin Sun felt that his whole body was bathed in the warm light of Tao. His mind was empty and there was no more thought. Whoosh, the qi, blood, spiritual power, and spirit in his body started to circulate on their own, lively and smooth. The cave in his body rumbled, and divine light gushed out. At this moment, Lin Sun forgot everything. He forgot the matchless battle in the sky, forgot the mysterious golden cicada beside him, and forgot to be vigilant and on guard. He was in a very strange state at the moment. It was as if he was comprehending the great Tao, but also as if he had entered a trance state without any thoughts. His mind was empty both inside and outside. Unknowingly, the battle in the night sky came to an end, and peace was restored. Even so, the experts hiding in various areas of the mulberry forest still had a lingering fear. This battle of the divine path was too terrifying, and even the life and death kings were terrified. Who won and who lost? No one knew. Who were the two saints fighting? Similarly, no one could see clearly. It was precisely because of this that this battle caused this boundless mulberry forest to seem even more mysterious and dangerous. Why don't you kill him? White Cicada appeared on the holy ice tree and saw Lin Sun sitting in the holy glory. A killing intent flashed through its eyes. Golden Cicada looked at Lin Sun with his clear eyes and said leisurely, "It's my fate to meet such an interesting young man when I finally wake up. I have no killing intent in my heart. How can I take his life?" "Interesting?" White Cicada said disdainfully. "He is just a young man of Tao Insight realm. Since ancient times, he is not the only one who has embarked on the path of Tao. Although the insignificant bow and the blue sky arrow were obtained by this young man, these two treasures have long lost their original power. Is this interesting? You don't understand." Golden Cicada shook its head. "What you see is just the surface. There is something more interesting about him. Why don't I kill him, break open his body, and find out the truth?" The White Cicada sneered. Golden Cicada said unhurriedly, "If you do that, then I will use this sacred origin fruit to reconstruct his body." "How dare you?" White Cicada's voice suddenly became cold. "Do you think there is anything in this world that I dare not do? Don't forget, the reason why I chose to remain silent back then was because I wanted to wait for an opportunity to prove a thought in my heart. As for this Saint Yuan fruit, it is merely something that I can do without. Only you would care so much about it." Golden Cicada's voice was still gentle and calm. But White Cicada was silent for a long time, and then said, "What on earth do you want to do?" "I want to see what the holy path of this young man is." Golden Cicada answered casually, "It's like planting a seed. I just want to see what kind of flower it will bear." "In the end, you still believe in the so-called hope. Let me tell you, there is no such thing as the Tao you imagined in this world." White Cicada laughed coldly. "If you don't believe it, wait and see." Then wait and see. Golden Cicada was as quiet as ever. When the night faded, Lin Sun woke up. He was stunned at first, and then he was shocked. The holy ice tree was gone. At this moment, he was sitting on a stone, surrounded by blood mist, as if everything he experienced last night was just a dream. Lin Sun suddenly got up and glanced around. Indeed, it was gone. Even the golden cicada had disappeared, as if it had never existed. No, this is not a dream. Lin Sun soon found that his whole body seemed to have been reborn. Every inch of his skin was full of a magnificent vitality, and the spiritual energy in his body was like a boiling ocean, strong and abundant. The rich power dyed the internal cave with a layer of sacred atmosphere, and his cultivation had reached the mastery of the Tao Insight realm. Chapter 730. It must be the effect of that holy fruit. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun made a judgment which shocked him. Sounds of nature novels last night. He only sat there quietly and bathed in the divine brilliance emitted by the holy fruit, but it allowed his cultivation to reach the consummation of the Tao Insight realm overnight. This was too shocking. If I were to consume that holy fruit, what kind of miraculous effect would it have? Soon, Lin Sun took a deep breath and stopped thinking about it. Everything that happened last night seemed absurd and unreal, like a dream, but after all, it helped him avoid a disaster. Wood Spiritual Peak was dead, Jin Duzhen and Kanglin Shui were also dead, and he had profited from the disaster. Not only did he hear some secrets about the divine Tao, but his cultivation had also undergone a transformation due to a freak combination of factors. What is the origin of the golden cicada? Why does it hibernate in the mulberry forest? And the blood-colored moth and the white cicada are also in the divine realm. Why do they also hibernate here? Lin Sun didn't know, but he was sure that maybe when a certain time came, these dormant divine path creatures would inevitably come out. Not long after, Lin Sun's figure flickered and left the area. Along the way, as before, he carefully searched the area along the way, hoping to dig up more strange jade stones. As for the rare opportunity, he had completely forgotten about it. In this mulberry forest, there were not only kings, but also horrible divine path creatures. Even if there was a great opportunity, it was not something he could think about at all. Damn voodoo barbarian bastards, they are getting more and more arrogant. Do they really think they have the upper hand in the mulberry forest? Alas, the situation of our imperial practitioners is not very optimistic. Fortunately, we escaped quickly this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid we will be caught as cannon fodder and forced to work for those voodoo barbarian bastards to dig up treasures. Damn it! If there are more ruthless people like Lin Shi in our imperial practitioners, we won't be so aggrieved. Suddenly, a cursing voice came from the bloody mist in the distance, which attracted Lin Sun's attention. Guys, what happened in front of us? Lin Sun approached and saw 5 or 6 practitioners of the Empire running away with a sullen, angry and unwilling look. He couldn't help asking, what else can it be? The brilliance of treasures is spreading out from a natural cave up ahead, but it has been occupied by the scumbags of the sorcerer barbarians. Also, they are capturing the practitioners of the Imperium as cannon fodder to explore and excavate treasures for them. This is outrageous. A middle-aged man said indignantly. Young man, hurry up and run away. Don't get close to that place. It has been controlled by the voodoo barbarian bastards, and there is even a half-step king warrior among them. You will die if you go there. Other practitioners also warned Lin Sun. Oh, I see. Thank you. Lin Sun nodded and flashed away. He had been chased by people of Wood Spirit Peak and was almost killed. His heart had been full of anger for a long time. At this time, hearing such a thing, Lin Sun suddenly found a way to vent his anger. He actually didn't listen to my advice? Aren't you afraid of death? Those practitioners were all stunned. The direction Lin Sun was heading towards was the area they had escaped from before. No. Didn't you notice that the young man seems to be very similar to the legendary Lin Shi? Someone seemed to realize something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. What? He is not dead? Gosh, this is big news. He was chased by 3 half-step king warriors and still survived. He is so powerful. Those practitioners were all in an uproar and excited. When they thought about it carefully, they felt that the young man they just saw was Lin Shi, because the young man was holding an extremely rough and ferocious white bone bow, which had long become the unique symbol of Lin Shi and left a deep impression on them. Should we follow him and have a look? Someone suggested, which immediately made the other practitioners excited. Let's go. Immediately, someone took the lead and went back the way they came. The other practitioners hurried to follow. The area ahead was filled with a strong and pungent smell of blood. There were broken bodies on the ground, all of which belonged to the practitioners of the Imperium. It was a shocking scene. A mighty old man who looked like he was made of stone stood there. His eyes were cold and murderous, and he was monitoring this area. He came from the Earth Barbarian branch, and his name was Ting Hai. He had killed many practitioners of the Imperium and captured some of them. At this time, he was driving these practitioners of the Imperium to help him dig a natural cave nearby. There was treasure light in it, but also unpredictable killing intent. Nearby, some strong voodoo barbarians were watching. What? Another fish fell into the net. Ting Hai's lips curled up. Little guy, you are brave. You still dare to approach after seeing this scene. The strong voodoo barbarians nearby also laughed with a playful look. Did you kill all the people on the ground? Lin Sun's eyes swept over the broken bodies on the ground, and he looked very calm. Many enslaved practitioners of the Imperium nearby were alarmed and looked over. What are you looking at? Do you want to die? Keep digging. Ting Hai shouted coldly, and his killing intent lingered. Those practitioners of the Imperium looked pale and blue. Finally, they could only swallow their grievances, lower their heads, and continue to dig near the underground cave. Little guy, I killed them, so what? Don't just stand there. If you don't want to die, get over here and work with them. Ting Hai showed a scornful look. Gee, something's wrong. Elder, this boy seems to be. A strong voodoo barbarian next to Ting Hai seemed to find something. His face suddenly changed, and he reminded Ting Hai in a low voice. Bang! Before he finished, Lin Sun had already pulled the insignificance bow to the fullest, and the arrow of blue sky burst out. With a loud explosion and various strange phenomena, the horrible breath of destruction instantly shrouded the whole area. It's him. Ting Hai's eyes almost popped out. He recognized Lin Sun, and his face suddenly became uneasy. Then he roared and rushed to the sky. As a half-step king, Ting Hai's reaction was not slow. But after all, he was caught off guard, and it was too late for him to dodge. Puff! In the distance, those practitioners who had met Lin Sun before had arrived. They happened to see a black arrow rushing to the sky and penetrating Ting Hai's body, bringing a string of scarlet blood. Like firecrackers flying in the air, a bloody firework exploded in the void, which was sad, beautiful, and frightening. A half-step king died in front of them. The shock made all the people present speechless. The power of one arrow was as terrible as the rumor said. Those imperial practitioners all thought of the same name, Lin Shi, only he had such a heaven-defying archery. As for those strong voodoo barbarians in the field, they were completely scared. How could they expect that a teenager suddenly appeared and killed their half-step king with one arrow? It was too fast. This kind of battle of life and death decided by one arrow was so shocking that the minds of those strong voodoo barbarians went blank. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun pulled out the broken sword without hesitation and began to kill. Screams rang out, waking up the imperial practitioners who were still in shock. As if awakened from a dream, they shouted and rushed forward to fight side by side with Lin Sun. Kill! Kill these King voodoo barbarian bastards! These imperial practitioners had been captured and enslaved, so they were about to go crazy. Now, they vented their anger on these strong voodoo barbarians. In just a moment, more than a dozen strong voodoo barbarians in the field were slaughtered, and their blood sprinkled on the spot. All the imperial practitioners were very excited. They came forward to thank Lin Sun with undisguised admiration and respect in their eyes. Lin Shi of the Empire deserved his reputation. More importantly, they were saved by Lin Shi today, and witnessed the power of him killing a half-step king with one arrow. Lin Sun couldn't bear the enthusiasm of these people. He told them to hurry up and clean up the trophies, and then he came to the natural cave. The cave was only 3 feet wide and led to the underground. It looked like a beast cave, but inside it was glittering and filled with green brilliance. There was no doubt that there must be some treasures hidden in the depths, but at the same time Lin Sun also noticed that there was a dangerous breath in the cave. It was so cold that Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. "What's inside?" Lin Sun called a practitioner and asked. The practitioner hurriedly said, "I don't know, but according to the analysis of the half-step king of Voodoo barbarian tribe, the treasure inside contains extremely amazing vitality. Maybe it's a peerless medicine that has just awakened from silence." Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Peerless medicine? But why did he always have a feeling of horror? When he looked down the cave, he seemed to be looking at an eye. Lin Sun took a deep breath and ordered, "You leave here first and I'll have a try. Remember, the farther you go, the better." Hearing this, the practitioners of the Empire were all awestruck. They didn't dare to neglect and avoided the area in the distance. Lin Sun picked up the broken sword, gritted his teeth, and was about to cut the cave with all his strength. Suddenly, a green light rushed up. At that instant, Lin Sun clearly saw a pair of eyes open in the depths of the cave. It was icy cold, indifferent, and flowed with a terrifying jade-green glow. Its pupils were deep like the universe, and it revealed the terrifying phenomena of the sun and moon intersecting, the passage of time, and so on and so forth. Whoosh! Lin Sun felt uneasy and dared not to hesitate. He exerted Ice Drake's steps with all his strength and disappeared in an instant. Until he fled nearly 50 kilometers away, Lin Sun's heart was still beating violently, and he still had a lingering fear. It was so terrible. That must be a horrible creature lying dormant under the earth, and it was very likely that it had set foot on the divine path like the bloody moth, white cicada and golden cicada. Shit, peerless medicine! Lin Sun scolded in his heart and was covered with cold sweat. The mulberry forest was so strange that unpredictable killing intent was hidden everywhere. Before long, those imperial practitioners also arrived. Seeing that Lin Sun was fine, they all breathed a sigh of relief. They had also felt the incomparably terrifying aura before, which made them tremble with fear even though they were far away from each other. Next, these practitioners distributed more than half of the spoils to Lin Sun, including many exotic jades, other rare spiritual materials and fifth-grade ones. Lin Sun was in need of exotic jades now, so he naturally wouldn't refuse them. This even made Lin Sun have an idea. Chapter 731. Before leaving, these practitioners of the Empire told Lin Sun that there were many bad rumors about him in recent days, which made almost all the practitioners of the Empire worried about him. Sounds of Nature small voodoo barbarians, on the other hand, swore that Lin Sun was doomed to die as he was chased by 3 half-step king practitioners. In fact, it was true. From yesterday to now, Lin Sun's life and death had affected the hearts of every practitioner of the Empire. As there was no news about Lin Sun for a long time, the practitioners of the Empire became more and more worried. Under such circumstances, the voodoo barbarians were extremely active. What Lin Shi? When his head falls to the ground, it will be in vain. Many strong voodoo barbarians said. What was most shocking was that K, the young master of the royal family of the Dark Barbarians, gathered many strong voodoo barbarians and secretly added fuel to the fire by declaring everywhere that Lin Sun had been killed. he used this despicable means to undermine the morale of the practitioners of the empire. Although this means was a little shameless, it was very effective. It made the practitioners of the empire angry and sad, and their morale was dampened. That is to say, now both the voodoo barbarians and the empire think I am dead? Lin Sun's black eyes were surging with inexplicable luster. Those practitioners nodded. In K, thinking of this person, Lin Sun thought of Lu Wen who betrayed the empire. With a flash of killing intent in his heart, he said, "Can you do me a favor?" "Child Lin, go ahead." Those practitioners said one after another. "Spread the news for me. In one word, let those half-step king practitioners among the voodoo barbarians wash their necks and wait for me." Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air as their hearts trembled. In an area of the mulberry forest. "I haven't heard from Lin Shi for a day. He must be dead. It's really a pity. I wanted to learn the mystery of the peerless Tao from him, but now, I have to give up." In K sighed. Immediately, he smiled and said, "But it doesn't matter. There are immeasurable opportunities hidden everywhere in the mulberry forest. As long as I explore slowly, I will find such opportunities sooner or later." Speaking of this, he suddenly stood up with his bright eyes and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, the influence of Lin Shi's death is absolutely beyond our imagination. He is not only a young talent who set foot on the peerless Tao, but also a spiritual tattooist of the human empire. His death is fated to be a heavy blow to the Xiozha of the empire." Voodoo barbarians nearby all nodded in agreement. Since the rise of Lin Shi in the bloodthirsty battlefield, he had killed a half-step king warrior and many top figures of the spirit awakening realm, which caused a sensation and even cast a shadow over the entire voodoo barbarian camp, making them frightened. This person had become an extremely dazzling new star in the Empire's camp. He was like a heaven-defying monster, and his name resounded throughout the bloodthirsty battlefield. If such a young man who was in the limelight were to die, it would be an unbearable loss to the Empire. "What does young master plan to do?" Lu Wen hurriedly asked, appearing very enthusiastic. His flattery made the nearby voodoo barbarians disgusted and felt this guy was too shameless. But Lu Wen didn't care. He only knew that if he wanted to stand firm in the voodoo barbarian camp in the future, he must flatter Inkei, the young master of the dark barbarian royal family. Continue to build momentum. Use all means to spread the news of Lin Shi's death throughout the mulberry forest. The more exaggerated it is, the greater the blow to the human empire. Inkei was complacent and didn't hide his thoughts. Although the means seemed a little disgraceful, this was the war between the two camps. As long as the morale of the human tribe in the empire could be defeated, it didn't matter if it was glorious or not. "Let's do it." The nearby voodoo barbarians all agreed. They acted decisively and quickly. Soon, they dispersed, contacted the voodoo barbarians scattered in the mulberry forest, and spread the news everywhere. The reason why they were so active was that the existence of Lin Sun had brought a lot of shadows and blows to the voodoo barbarian tribe before, which made them all resentful and full of anger. A young man in the Tao Insight realm, with only a mysterious big bow, made the half-step king warrior on their side have to be afraid of him, which made them feel terrible. Now Lin Sun was chased by 3 half-step king warriors, and there was no news about him, which made them completely conclude that Lin Sun had been killed, so they spread the news so widely. "Lin Shi is dead. Is that all your empire can do? It's really sad that you can't even protect a young talent." "Haha, what bullshit talent. In the eyes of our voodoo barbarians, he is just a chicken and a dog, not worth mentioning. Now that Lin Shi is dead, what can you do?" Similar news, like a storm, began to sweep across the mulberry forest. Those strong voodoo barbarians were all in high spirits and exalted. For them, this news was great news, which was enough to make them clap their hands and shout for joy. "Hee hee, this is the talent of your empire? Just SOSO. Get out of here. Otherwise, not only Lin Shi, but all the bastards of your empire will be killed. Some more unbearable words came out of the voodoo barbarian's mouth. They seemed to be unscrupulous and extremely proud. They had been holding it in for a long time, and now they finally vented their anger, which made them feel very happy. Meanwhile, the practitioners of the empire were in turmoil. They were all angry, sad, and helpless. Such news of Lin Shi's death was really a big blow to them. You've gone too far. When learning the news, General Shihojie roared with anger. His voice shook the sky and made people's hearts tremble. But this made the voodoo barbarians even more happy. King Yanqiong said disdainfully, "You're only noisy and incompetent." Just as the wind was surging and the clouds were surging, a shocking piece of news came out. Young Master Lin is not dead. Today, he showed up in person and killed Ting Hai, the half-step king of Earth Barbarian clan, with one arrow. All of a sudden, the noisy discussion stopped abruptly. Those complacent, flamboyant voodoo barbarians who were cursing happily were all dumbfounded. They fell into dead silence and were dumbfounded. The slap in the face came as fast as a tornado. They were caught off guard. Even the practitioners of the empire were a little confused. Lin Shi was not dead? And he killed Ting Hai, the half-step king of Earth barbarians? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. This time, we sent 3 half-step king of Earth barbarians. How could he still be alive? Among the strong voodoo barbarians, some big shots roared. They were trying their best to investigate the authenticity of this news. Even Winning Sparrow, who was adding fuel to the fire in the dark, looked uncertain. How could this be? Was that guy so tough? Soon, the news was confirmed. Ting Hai was indeed killed. His body was penetrated by an arrow and exploded like firework. He died miserably. Suddenly, there seemed to be a big earthquake in the mulberry forest. All the strong voodoo barbarians who didn't want to believe the news were completely petrified and almost collapsed. How could this be? All the strong voodoo barbarians who learned the news were so angry that their faces turned green. They looked as if they were mourning the death of their parents and were about to vomit blood. This was a great blow. Just a moment ago, they were still announcing the death of Lin Sun and ridiculing the practitioners of the empire. They wanted to take this opportunity to severely damage the morale of the practitioners of the empire. But they didn't expect that the slap in the face would come soon. It was indeed like being slapped hard in the face by an invisible slap, burning with pain. On the side of the empire, they were all shocked and ecstatic. He was not dead. Sure enough, Lin Shi was not dead. Not long ago, they were depressed, resentful, and helpless because of the blow. How could they expect that in the end, there was a reversal? Ha! Child Lin is so amazing. Well done. Those voodoo barbarians are blind. How dare they say that Grandmaster Lin was killed? It's ridiculous. Hey, I'm curious. Those voodoo barbarians were arrogant and complacent before. What will their expressions be now? On the side of the empire, there was a complete uproar. They cheered excitedly and their morale was greatly boosted. Have you noticed that Child Lin showed up alive and killed a half-step king warrior? But there has been no news from the 3 half-step king warriors who chased after Child Lin before. Does this mean that they have all been killed by Child Lin? When this speculation came into being, it caused another round of sensation. Some top figures of the empire were shocked and moved. As for the voodoo barbarians, they were all numb and cold. Yes, if Lin Shi was alive, wouldn't the 3 half-step king warriors, would Spirit Peak, Jean Duzhen, and Kanglin Snow be? They didn't dare to think about it anymore. Who could imagine that Lin Shi didn't die in the end? Instead, he killed Ting Hai, a half-step king warrior, and even would Spirit Peak might be killed by him? If they counted carefully, there were as many as 5 half-step king warriors of the voodoo barbarian tribe who had been killed by Lin Shi. This was absolutely a terrifying number. After all, half-step king warriors were not cabbages. Even in the voodoo barbarian camp, they were a top-level deterrent force. Their number was extremely small, second only to the real king warriors. But now, 5 half-step king warriors had been killed by a young man at the Tao Insight Realm. This was a serious blow to the voodoo barbarian tribe. For a while, the discussions and uproars were like landslides and tsunamis. On the side of the empire, even General Xiahou was not stingy with his praise and laugh. And King Flame Qiong, who was extremely arrogant and disdainful before, fell into a rare silence. This result also caught him off guard. Inkei and other strong voodoo barbarians were all dumbfounded and couldn't speak for a long time. Originally, all of this was secretly added fuel to the fire by wantonly publicizing and constantly building momentum. They never thought that when the morale of the strong voodoo barbarians was at its highest, there would be such a shocking turn. It was like being pushed from heaven to hell. The contrast was so great that they were so depressed that they were about to vomit blood. The momentum they had built up had made them embarrassed and aggrieved. Who could bear such a blow? It would be an understatement to say that they had lifted a stone only to drop it on their own feet. This was purely asking to be slapped and humiliated. Ah!